across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you, Alex. Back tomorrow at 10 o'clock right here on Talk. So, what have we got? Tory leader Kemi Badenoch wants the RAF to target and destroy Iran's missile sites to halt launches against allies. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has been criticised for not backing the initial US-Israel strike on the Iranian regime over the weekend. It's day 6 and it's ongoing. We'll have more of that in a few moments' time. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has announced a major immigration reform offering failed asylum seeker families an awful lot of money to voluntarily leave the UK or face forced removal. I'll tell you what that figure is in just a moment. You will not believe it. It's on its way. And the Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, has proposed left-wing parties work together, oh, the joy, to counter Reform UK's growing influence, fueling a coalition of chaos fear. More on that story as well. Always good to tuck into. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. That is where you will find us. You can leave a voice note there too, or you can message 87222. So what should our involvement be in Iran? Simple question. Are we defensive? Is it a bit of background assistance? Or should we be full-on military inclusion? The room does divide on this very point, of course. People have their own ideas. You heard what Kemi Badenoch said. But we did find out today, I mean, this is just disturbing and delicious all at the same time. Ed Miliband had the mother of all hissy fits at the mere thought that we would help America. So on Friday, when they realised this was rumbling, before anybody else was allowed to know, they all got together for a bit of a powwow in the cabinet room. A full-on cabinet revolt resulted in pretty much the same position that Keir Starmer then went out to tell the world about. Let's have a reminder.
But on Iran, I want to make clear the UK was not involved in the offensive strikes of the US and Israel, and that remains the case.
That remains the case. That is our Prime Minister speaking, Keir Starmer. And he repeated that message, then, of course, had to change his mind. I should add, by the way, it wasn't just Lefty Ed that had a hissy fit. Yvette Cooper and Rachel Reeves were also on the pacifist team sheet. It got so bad that had we gone with a straightforward arrangement with America to begin with, Keir Starmer would now be facing a rebellion so big that a leadership challenge would have been inevitable. That's how bad it is. Once again, the Prime Minister changes policy in order to save his own career. But it does throw us effortlessly into that question of what should our position be? What should the United Kingdom's relationship with this war actually be? 0344 499 1000. Would you support boots on the ground, as an example? RAF on daily bombing raids. I mean, neither Israel or America are, in fact, asking for this, of course. But would you support it if they did? What should Britain's role in this war be? 0344 499 1000. We'll take calls on that. Meanwhile and elsewhere,
there is ample space for a migration system that is fair, but where it needs to be, firm. There can be both compassion and control in a system that rewards contribution and those who play by the rules.
Yeah, but who makes the rules, Home Secretary? Shabana Mahmood there speaking in the last hour. Get your ears around this. Asylum-seeking families are to be offered up to £40,000 to leave Britain under a scheme that Shabana Mahmood is announcing. £40,000. The Home Secretary is to launch a pilot where up to £10,000 per person will be given to families if they agree Oh, that's nice of them. If they agree to return to their home countries within 7 days. Around about 150 families are expected to take part in a trial under which a mother, father and 2 kids would get a maximum of £40,000. And I promise you, if you're going back to Eritrea or Cameroon, it's happy days over there in that family. £40,000. This is modelled on a kind of slightly Danish initiative. She argues, the Home Secretary says, it will save the taxpayer as much as £20 million, as it would cost the state £158,000 to house a family of 4 in a UK hotel every year, potentially indefinitely. This is beyond unbelievable. So we're in a pincer movement, right? We're in a cul-de-sac on this. There's no way out of this, apparently. You didn't create the situation. Well, we could argue lapse borders, but a bunch of people who shouldn't be here come here. They are then deemed to be failures in their asylum application, along with their family, and then we have to pay in order for them to leave. £40,000. This apparently will enamour people to come queuing up to leave. I would imagine it will also enamour people to come queuing up to arrive and then to queue up and to leave. I can see it doing both things. 0344 499 1000. She also says failure to stop immigration will demolish trust in the state. She's warned that new legislation is in to scale back asylum support that's going to be introduced to Parliament. About 40 Labour MPs are going to rebel against any new legislation, possibly more. The idea we need new laws on this should be a joke. Asylum seekers who break the law, illegally work or cannot support themselves financially will have their accommodation and financial support removed under new laws to be introduced today. The idea that that is some, amazing announcement, that should be the default position, right? That should be the default position. You come on a boat, you're escaping a war zone, apparently you're destitute. And before you know it, you've got yourself a little job with the delivery people sending out food of an evening and a rack of Old Spice and a new set of Nike gear. That, I'm afraid, is not really what you'd imagine the definition of desperation is. 0344 499 1000. This is a masterclass on how our system is not just broken, but beyond intelligent belief. Your calls on all of that, the asylum issue, and what should Britain's role be in the Iranian war? Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Peter Barnes is back with us, political strategist. Peter, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you doing?
Very good. Nice to have you with us. Listen, there's lots to talk about. It's day 6 of the Iran war. I think we can reasonably call it that now. And, of course, we have some more bad headlines for Keir Starmer. Bahrain, the UAE, Cyprus have expressed concern over Starmer's sluggish response to those Iranian retaliatory strikes, of course, which are pretty much non-existent. UK's Bahrain naval base support facility hosts about 300 personnel, and that, of course, is just 200 metres from that Iranian drone missile attack. So there's a lot to get our head around here. Keir Starmer is absolutely scuppered here, isn't he? Because he's playing to the Ed Miliband gallery, and therefore that cartel of backbench Labour MPs, and simultaneously losing the room everywhere else.
Oh, I don't think he's won a room since he became Prime Minister. How he actually became Prime Minister is beyond me at this point. I actually really can't understand how anybody thought that this guy would be a good Prime Minister. But, I mean, on the issue of Iran, what has annoyed me the most is the idea that Britain somehow wasn't read into any of this, that somehow it happened upon the government and they're just trying to do the best they can. That is a categorical lie, purely because the American Air Force had to get to Iran, had to get to the bases. They used UK airspace to do this. So therefore, they're either completely blind to what's happening in our own airspace, or they knew about it and they did nothing to prepare or actually reinforce our bases in Cyprus or in Qatar or anywhere like that. That is the more concerning thing. They knew this was happening. They've even had this little cabinet meeting before anybody else got to know, although everybody with a brain knew this was going to happen. And yet nothing was done. Nothing was done to protect our interests, our assets and our personnel overseas in that area. That is absolutely the definition of the failure of the #1 job, and that is to protect the interests of the people of the nation. How he's still Prime Minister is absolutely beyond me. I just don't get it. And then I suddenly realise it's the Labour Party, it's 2026, and it's the decade of clowns running the country. It is terrifying, the situation we find ourselves in, because it's not just that, you know, that we're kind of looked down upon as old Britain's not involved. It's the next time we are not seen as a reliable partner. That is the big point. We are no longer Britain the reliable. Yeah. We're not the one you call when there's a problem. We're the ones we're now about fourth or fifth down the list. We've had to have the French and the Greek Navy protect our own assets abroad. That is embarrassing and dangerous on a level I cannot put into words. The one good thing I think we've got going at the moment is our intelligence services, and that is the one thing keeping the special relationship alive, because we have a unique bond between the CIA, MI6, and our security services and theirs. That's about it. Everything else is dead. The State Department is absolutely apoplectic with the Foreign Office and the British government. Donald Trump, I mean, he said he's not Winston Churchill. I'd love to know what he said when the cameras weren't turned on, because I imagine it was a lot worse than what he was subjected to. But Keir Starmer playing to whatever music he can find at the moment, because, you know, this idea that Ed Miliband is somehow going to lead some kind of cabinet revolt, my lord, help us all.
But you can see, and by the way, it's worth just saying, Peter, that it's local elections 9 weeks today. Oh, 9 weeks today, where Keir Starmer's fate could be well and truly sealed. I mean, if they are as bad as the predictions are, we might be having a very different conversation come May the 10th this year. On that issue of, you know, where Starmer's at, I mean, the mere idea that Ed Miliband thought a government that he was in was going to help Donald Trump, it's just alien to his thinking. I mean, he's so far gone down the left-wing road that he just couldn't countenance the idea. If you do it, we're all out. Yvette Cooper joining in, Rachel Reeves joining in. They hate it.
Oh, yeah, Yvette Cooper, who's she? I mean, like, where's our foreign secretary been for the last God knows how many months? I don't think she even exists anymore. But the thing is, it's not just a left-wing thing. It's Trump derangement syndrome personified. Anything that man says has to be the wrong thing. They have to be against it because he's Donald Trump. They've got it into their heads that this guy is the villain. And he is the only person in the world at the moment, apart from probably Benjamin Netanyahu, that understands that an Iranian regime with a nuclear weapon is a danger to everybody in the world. This is a nihilistic, apocalyptic cult. That is what they are. They believe that they bring around their next leader, their next ruler, by bringing about the end of the world. That is it. So that is why we've gone in. It is nothing to do with, you know, all this kind of, humanitarianism. It is literally, these people cannot be afforded a nuclear weapon and they have to be stopped. And the only way you can stop them is with bombs, bullets, and boots on the ground. It is not meetings and, we can all have another round of talks. We tried that. They laughed at Trump in his face. He offered them an entire nuclear civilian program for free. £30 billion worth of program for free. They said no. There's only one reason they did that. They want the weapon. And this idea that Ed Miliband, Yvette Cooper, all these people think that, if we all hold hands, we all sing Kumbaya, everything will be fine. It's nonsense. It's dangerous. And they shouldn't be in government.
Indeed. Let's move to this story. That flight chartered by the UK government to bring Britons back home, still stranded, as I understand it, in the Middle East. It's not yet taken off. It's there. It was meant to come back. The government says technical issues are to blame for this. But, I mean, this just goes to show, doesn't it, about the kind of mess we're in with this whole thing, because you've got probably some pretty terrified Brits who are not always right in the melee, but the mere idea you're in the region is a fairly frightening affair. You want to come home.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the Foreign Office should have had in place these plans, no matter what kind of tensions or anything was in place. It's the Middle East. Everybody with a brain knows it's the Middle East. Therefore, something potentially could happen, and we need to get our people out. These should have been practiced again and again and again. They should be literally like putting on a pair of socks.
Yep.
That's what it should have been like, and it wasn't, and it is failing. And I don't just blame this government for this. This is a long-term problem that we've had. The defence and the security of the nation and our interests abroad have been dropped down the list because people wanted more more on welfare, more spending on the NHS, all this kind of stuff. This is what comes at the cost of that. And it's about time the British public woke up to that fact. And I think the Conservatives have a lot of blame on this. The Lib Dems, everybody in the political establishment is to blame for the mess that we're in.
Absolutely. Peter, stay with us. Lots more to come, including that extraordinary offer from the Home Secretary to some failed asylum families who could get the thick end of £40,000 if they'll be good enough to leave the country that they shouldn't actually have been in the first place. You can't make this stuff. There's a lot of people listening to this that would leave the country for 40,000 quid, that's for sure. Lines are open. Plus that question, what should Britain's role be in this war? Are you satisfied with a sort of vague defensive position, which apparently is what we're doing? Or would you go all in if America and Israel asked that question? Would you support that? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
No doubt that the British government has acted in an incredibly weak, equivocal way. It's easy to start a war, very difficult to ensure that the aftermath doesn't descend into complete chaos.
What's your view of that outburst of Trump?
Well, Trump doesn't mince his words, but I think his criticism is justified. I mean, we should have realised where our national interests stood, and he should have expressed immediate support.
We have pursued a ludicrous energy policy, preceding this government, frankly, and all the knock-on effects to that for our economy are catastrophic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And just a reminder, by the way, Keir Starmer will be speaking live at 2 o'clock. There is a press conference convened. One assumes this is an update on the Middle East, the conflict, and all that goes with it. It's the Downing Street press conference. 2 o'clock, it's about 40 minutes time. Often run about 5 minutes late or thereabouts, but we'll bring you that live when it happens this afternoon. Meantime, Peter Barnes is with us, looking at the big stories of the day. This one's an absolute beauty, Peter. This is Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, of course, was giving that speech this morning. She had a lot to say about illegal immigration. There was one specific part of the speech where she targeted the Green Party leader, Zach Polanski. Now, that's never normally a bad thing. Let's have a listen to what she said.
Party leader who seeks the highest office in the land should not be on the beaches of France helping migrants onto small boats, encouraging them to make a perilous crossing.
OK, that's what she said. But wasn't this the same Shabana Mahmood herself on the Greek beaches in 2015?
We're still here at Skibenia, where another boat of refugees has arrived over from Turkey, and the layout is that there's a clothes station where they can get some dry clothes, and then there's a medic station, and then there's some food. All of this is being provided primarily by young Greek volunteers, and honestly, I take my hat off to them. Some of these people don't have very much.
Yeah, way too shabby Shabana on the beaches of Greece, helping the migrants, Peter. What's going on?
I mean, as soon as she said that, I was like, I'm sure she's the same Home Secretary that was literally on the beaches not so long ago when she was a backbencher.
That's the same one,
like,
yeah.
It's the same person.
We even looked through the register to see if there was another Shabana Mahmood that was in the beaches encouraging the refugees.
Yeah.
But she would argue, of course, oh, it's a different story. Well, I think that's a tenuous argument.
I swear, if one more person says to me, oh, well, she seems to be making the right noises, I'm not legally liable for my actions because it's nonsense. This woman is just as inept as Yvette Cooper. She's no idea what she's doing. And this £40,000, I'll leave the country for £40,000 if they're that desperate to get rid of people. I mean, what bigger kind of come on in signal do you want them? Come over here, you might get £40,000. Oh, you might get to stay. In what world is she thinking that this is going to work? Now, she's going it off the Danish model. Now, the thing with the Danish model is they have a lot tougher kind of social integration programs where you can't have ghettoization, you can't have a certain percentage of so many people living in an area. We don't have that here. We don't have any of that here. So the idea that we're kind of copying the Danish model is just absolute nonsense. But as per usual, this is the Labour Party scrambling to try to defeat reform on the issue of immigration, all that kind of stuff, and then also trying to attack at the same time the Green Party as well on the same issue. It doesn't make any sense because they don't know who they're talking to. Because yet again, the Labour Party have this big problem of they've said everything to everybody, and now everybody's coming up saying, well, you promised us this, and they can't deliver on any of it.
We often talk about living in this sort of Alice in Wonderland, upside down hall of mirrors kind of existence. What's fascinating about this is that they're talking about giving an asylum family around about 40,000 quid to leg it under the scheme. So these are people that shouldn't have been here, failed all the tests. And the reason they're doing that is because to keep that same family here would cost the state $158,000 to house them in a hotel every year, potentially indefinitely. Now, nobody should be arguing that as if it's a bargain. I mean, both scenarios are horrific. You can't claim a taxpayer bonus by going, don't worry, kids, we got this one covered. We're just going to shell out 40k for every family that's here illegally. I mean, that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't, and this is the bigger point, is that what the numbers that they use don't take into account the kind of incentive factor of the programme itself. So, yes, they might save money in terms of the situation now, but that's presuming the situation is going to stay the same. It's not taking into account, say, an influx of maybe Iranian refugees or an influx of people from around that region that would come to the UK. That's the big problem of this kind of number of they always save money. Yes, at the current level we would, but the current level stays the current level for about 10 minutes. It only gets worse. And as we've said before, Ian, we don't have a deterrent, we have a disruptor, and it's called the weather. And that's about it. So this is the big problem. If you don't have any actual deterrents and you just keep adding to the incentives, the rate will go up, so therefore the cost is still going to go up. It doesn't make any sense because, yet again, the Labour Party doesn't have a brain.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people getting in touch saying 40,000 quid, where do I sign? There's a lot of people. So yeah, I'd do that for 40 grand. I mean, it's extraordinary. We're about to start a whole new industry over here, I think. And this one as well, Andy Burnham, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has raised the coalition of chaos concerns after suggesting left-wing parties should work together against the growing threat from Reform UK. Let's have a listen to a recent speech he made referring to what he called unity.
To do that requires stability, and I make my own call for that today across the Labour Party. Of course, stability comes from greater unity, and that would be helped by a more inclusive way of running the party.
So, if I've got this right, Peter, he's talking about doing some kind of get-together with the Greens, possibly with Jeremy Corbyn. Who knows? I mean, just even as I'm saying the words and I'm imagining the sea of faces, I mean, it's a fairly bilious thought. But that appears to be what he's suggesting. Let's all get together, then we can beat the wicked centre-right people.
Yes, pretty much, because I always go back to the era of Gordon Brown in 2010. He was very happy to do the exact same thing of this hodgepodge of all these different rainbow coalition parties, get the SNP involved, get everybody in line, because you've got to beat the Tories, you've got to beat the evil right-wingers.
Yeah.
Oh, heaven forbid that we let a right-wing government in. I mean, I'd love one for a starter, but there you go. But this is the bigger point, is that Andy Burnham, yet again, is playing this unity card, despite being one of the biggest disruptors inside the Labour Party. Though I will say, if he was on the ticket at Denton, the Gorton by-election, he probably would have won. He would have been the only Labour politician that could have won. So there is a big movement behind him now, and he's not like Keir Starmer. He's got a better political weather vane. I mean, he's got our weather vane to begin with. So, I mean, that's a start. But I think this is the big point, is that you can't underestimate this man. He is a lot better politician. He's a lot more formidable. He knows the party, and he knows where the levers of power are. My big problem is giving the legitimacy of the Green Party that I think are the biggest existential threat that we face as a nation. I think it's dangerous, and he's doing it for power. I think he's a power-hungry individual. It's why he ran away to Greater Manchester, because he knew the Corbyn years would be a catastrophe. So now he gets to come back as the saviour of the Labour Party. It's a long-term plan that he's been doing. It's basically the same thing Nigel Farage did. It works perfectly, and he's just as good politician to actually be able to pull this off, and he's got to be stopped.
But if you had the Labour Party, the Green Party, and some of the speculation revolves around not just Labour and the Greens, but the Lib Dems, Plaid Cymru, the SNP, putting them all together. I mean, that's not really... I mean, what is that? Does that just become one party? What's the deal there? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. It becomes European politics. I find it quite funny that we Brexited, and we went independent, and we became more like Europe. It's quite hilarious, really. But this is how European politics works. It's coalitions, it's games, it's tactics, it's tactical voting, it's all this kind of stuff, and it's been imported into us because the two-party system has crumbled and shattered. This is the big point, is that all those individual parties are basically the same thing. They're just more further down the line than each other. They all believe in exactly the same thing. It's how far are you going. It's the exact same thing with Advance and Restore on the right as the Tories and Reform. It's just a matter of degrees. So the thing is, you find one unifying policy between them on the left, and they will become unstoppable. Because as we saw at the by-election, and we've seen in the past, and all the election data we've seen shows that those people are more willing to tactically vote than the right are. And this is the big threat to Reform and the Conservatives and everybody on the right wing of politics, is that you've got to kind of stop saying people are a threat and proving that they are. Prove that you're better. You can't just keep saying, oh, the Greens are going to do this and all that. You've got to prove it. And that's where the challenge now lies for Reform and Nigel Farage.
Indeed, Peter, thank you very much indeed, as ever, for your time. We'll speak again next week. He's Peter Barnes, always a very switched-on political strategist and full of energy too. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. Couple of questions there in terms of, well, the Home Secretary, what she's got to say about the £40,000. Don't worry, you didn't pass your asylum test, but you and your family can disappear with, have a look at what you would have won, 40,000 quid. And away you go. That's going to be worth an awful lot of money in some of the countries these people will be returning to, naturally. Thoughts on that? And the wider question, what should Britain's role be in the Iran war? We're day 6 so far. At the moment, to be fair, America or Israel have not asked for additional support in terms of literally fighting boots on the ground or dropping bombs. But if it came to that, would you support that position? 0344 499 1000. We have Ian Duncan Smith and Bill Cash with us in a couple of moments right here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Just gone 1:30. There's a lot to talk about in the sense of Iran. What is happening? What are we do? What is our inclusion? What is our role? Is it defensive? Will there be a further inclusion? It looks as if, bearing in mind an almighty fallout at a cabinet meeting on Friday, led, we understand, no surprise, by Ed Miliband, has meant that there'll be a lot of resistance. There was resistance when Keir Starmer merely suggested allowing Americans to use our air bases. They lost their mind in that cabinet meeting, it appears, and a rebellion was underway. Keir Starmer had to go out there and wheel out the no, we're not doing anything. No, there's no assistance here. Nothing to see here, Mr. President. And then, of course, 48 hours later, just under, he had to change his mind. Let's firstly get a word with Ian Duncan-Smith, MP, former Conservative Party leader. Ian, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Have you ever seen anything quite like this?
Well, it's a mess, isn't it, really? I mean, it reflects one thing. Forget about the assistance or the war or the Americans using the airfield. It shows you that we now have a Prime Minister who is there, but might as well not be.
Yeah.
That lovely phrase used, he's in government but not in power. And that's the truth. You see the division. They now believe that they can bully him. So they line up and they decide they don't want the policy. He has to guard our external relationships. He is the one that is in charge of that. So any consultation he makes, and then I was in cabinet, Cameron rang me up. He didn't ring everybody up, he rang a few people up. And said, what do you think? And you'd say, well, try this, try that, or whatever. But you don't go in as a group to gang up on him. The Prime Minister is responsible ultimately for making this decision. And if he was too weak to get his way, the result is what we see. And the fact is that we made no preparation at all, it appears to me, for defending not just our area of Cyprus, which now we hear the Cypriots are furious with us because we didn't, but also being absolutely ready to help defend our allies in the area.
Yeah.
We used to have a Gulf naval patrol. Where's that? Gone. And all the ships are in port. Why were they in port? Because we understand the MOD is under pressure from the Treasury to cut spending in this financial year. And so the only and quickest way they could do it in the end of the year was to put all the boats inside the harbour and not do anything with them. What an unbelievable cop-out. 8 weeks or so this has been going on, knowing that America may strike. So we could have easily positioned defensive items in the area. We didn't do it. I find it astonishing, really.
And one wonders, what on earth would happen if Israel and the United States were to ask us to become more involved in a military sense. I mean, one has to assume the answer to that would be, from Starmer, is going to be no. Or would it be?
Yeah, well, they got in a mess over their international law. People bandy international law around as though it was like domestic law, specific, clear, very, very dedicated to the idea of not taking action where complete evidence of it. It's not at all. It's very political, international law. It shifts and changes and depends on your interpretation of it. But the reality is, when he made this decision as a result of that bullying exercise by Miliband and co., what happened is that he then said we wouldn't let the Americans use because they were making effectively strikes on Iran, which were not self-defense. So 2 days later or 3 days later, he changes because he said, oh, actually now some of our friends are being hit and we've been targeted. Now, the point about this is all these backbenchers were cheering, saying he's kept us out of the war. They either must be incredibly stupid or didn't listen to what he said. He said we can do this for the Americans now because it's a defensive action. But that also means that the UK is now fully in the same category as the US is. That is to say, we are party now to these actions. So the RAF might as well take part or not. But the fact is we will still be party to this. And so all of a sudden they realize we are now with the Americans on this. But the worst bit about it is We got there after we so hacked the Americans off about the refusal, that we've gained nothing from it at all and lost everything. Our reputation, the sense of Britain as an important power, our allies are all hacked off with us across the Gulf.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't be in a worse position than we are now.
Yeah, we've managed to literally upset everybody in this inept process coming out of number 10. Ian, you're a former military man yourself. What does your instinct tell you about what is happening in Iran? There is, certainly at the beginning there was a sense, and I appreciate we're not even a week into this, but a sense that Donald Trump is very much sort of get in, get out very quickly, get this job done. There is another school of thought that this could run forever, or certainly for a lengthier period of time. What does your gut tell you on this?
Well, number one, Iran is a threat to the UK. Just in case anybody watching this thinks somehow we're separate. We're not. We have been targeted by Iran endlessly. We have had attacks on British soil because the government refuses to proscribe the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. They have been fomenting that Islamic extremism, which has caused huge problems on our streets. They are behind all of that. They're allowed to do so because they are not stopped. That is to say that they have freedom to walk around our streets. They attack Iranian dissidents. So they've been attacking us non-stop, and also our allies constantly. So first and foremost, they are a distinct and dangerous enemy who doesn't care a damn about who they kill, just so long as they can keep the West on the defensive. So we had every reason to support America in this, because this is very clear a present danger for us. Having said that, the reality here is also that the Americans have no intention of putting ground troops on the ground. People keep saying, learn the lessons from the Iraq War. This is a very different concept. What America wants to do is degrade and eventually collapse the IRGC's ability to make war and to suppress their people. They'll still have to keep on striking at the moment, but they are getting down that road where they're taking out all the key sites and the key command centers and some of the commanders. We hope for two things. First of all, eventually, others in the official army and others may say, enough's enough. We're sick and tired of having this because the IRGC exists. Time for a different government. And there are plenty of people on the streets and in their houses in Iran that hate this regime. So if we damage the IRGC's capability to strike and to make war and to decapitate them, then there's every chance that others who will now want to change the government may get more powerful. But the key priority is to destroy the capability of the IRGC to mount offensive operations in the United Kingdom and across the Middle East, and in many of our allies, and if necessary, if we do manage to get it done, completely destroy them. Those are the key principles.
And on that specific point of physical military inclusion from us, do you imagine the RAF dropping bombs on Tehran? Can you see that going forward?
Well, I don't know the government has the courage to do anything on this. I don't know whether the Americans even need us, to be quite frank, in this role. So I suspect that question won't arise. But, as I said earlier on, Labour MPs who do not want anything to do with this should realise that what the Prime Minister told them the other evening was not what they thought, which is, I've kept you out of this war, as it were. In fact, we are fully in it, because he has moved to a defensive posture over the bases and with our allies. So we are in it. Whether we strike Iranian sites in Iran or take out their drones and missiles where we can, then the answer is we are at war with Iran. And I think that the Labour Party has to get their head around that, because they are not, as Starmer said, not taking part. We are taking part. That's the fact of life.
Indeed. Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, thank you as ever for your time. Good to see you again, Ian. Ian Duncan-Smith, MP, former Conservative Party leader, former military man of note too. Let's get a word from Sir Bill Cash, former Tory MP too. Bill, good afternoon to you. Nice to see you again too. We've got all the A-listers on with us today, which is fabulous. Well, nice to have you here.
It's absolutely, I mean, I'm very glad to follow Ian. I mean, he's one of my best chums. And actually, he's completely right on all the things that he just said. It is the most amazing shambles. I was in Parliament for 40 years. I've never seen anything like this. We've managed to completely destroy relationships between ourselves, the United States, which is unbelievable. I mean, think of the First World War. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. But on top of that, Cyprus, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, it's just a list of shambles. And it's all brought about, if I can put it this way around, because I agree with everything Ian said before. But actually, it's also about international law. I was Shadow Attorney General for several years, and I can tell you, international law is not the be-all and end-all. It's used by Lord Hermer and by Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, as was clear from the statement he made in the House of Commons. The law is what it is. I was in there, in the undergallery, in the House of Commons chamber, and I heard him say it. The law is not what he says it is. In fact, what they've done is to bring in a new ministerial conduct code, which binds all the ministers to say that they're going to do anything which Hermer says, and Starmer backs this. It's a complete aberration of the manner in which we should conduct our foreign relations. And Emily Thornberry, who is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, came on, I think it was on the 28th of February, even before things changed, and said this is an illegal war. But this is a very serious problem, because you've got one of the most important Select Committee chairmen saying something which has now effectively been completely changed by events. Yeah. So it's not only a shambles, it's a disgrace.
It's reassuring to hear yourself and Ian before you picking up on that point of international law. This is kind of just rolled out very casually as if it usurps anything else. It's the sort of catch-all phrase, anything, any argument or reasoned discussion that you want to advance is kicked into the long grass because of international law.
Yeah, absolutely. And the United Nations Charter, Article 51, makes it absolutely clear that you are entitled to take action where there is an imminent threat. And there has been an imminent threat for far too long. And indeed, it's getting worse and worse almost by the day. In fact, it is getting worse by the day. So basically, international law is being used as a pretext, but at the same time, it's creating a total shambles and destroying our relationships. Yeah. I would say the Attorney General should go. Simple as that. I've said it several times in the Daily Telegraph, actually, over the last few years. And I've also raised a lot of objections to this assumption that we should be governed by international law for the last decade in Parliament.
Well, the trouble is, Bill, isn't it? You've got these characters like Hermer and Starmer, and there are, of course, there are others, all of the same.
It's not just Miliband.
Indeed, all of the same chambers, all of the same background, who are, it's almost in their DNA, this. I think they are kind of, I'm not trying to be deliberately mischievous or clever. I genuinely believe this is true. It's so hardwired.
You are completely right. And by the way in which, I know a lot about the Attorney General role because I was Shadow Attorney General myself. Yeah. And I can tell you they go for external advice. So they pick the advice that they get from the people who they think or can claim have got some independent expertise. Actually, to all intents and purposes, they go to the people that they know will give them the answer they want. And then, by the way, international law, because of the ministerial code and also because of the manner in which the Attorney General's position has been established, has control over the entire government legal service. I don't know whether people know this. When an Attorney General gives an opinion, then that is binding on the entire government legal service. So that is another incredible power. He becomes as important as the Prime Minister. And quite frankly, this has got to be changed. It's really, not only should the Attorney General, in my opinion, be replaced, but on top of that, the whole of the structure of the Attorney General's legal position ought to be seriously examined. There should be a proper Select Committee inquiry into it, and the position should be radically changed. We can't be governed by international law. We're governed, as our courts will say, where the law is clear and unambiguous, for example, in Acts of Parliament, international law can be overridden because we have an unwritten constitution. That is the actual position, and it's set out in the Rwanda judgment itself by the President of the Supreme Court.
And this is... Go on, Will, sorry.
Yeah, I just say, I mean, this is so critical because it's destroying our relationships, following an obsessive, enthusiastic but utterly misguided view that international law prevails over national law. It isn't true, and it should never be allowed to become apparent that that is the truth.
Yeah,
because it's not the truth.
Very well put as well, Bill. Thank you for that. But I just want to finish by asking where you think this is going to go, because Starmer is now a very compromised man. He's going all around. He's sort of created this cul-de-sac of doom for himself, almost, where he's managed to upset just about everybody, his own backbenchers, Donald Trump, all those neighbouring countries around Iran.
And every time he opens his mouth, he makes it worse. He's going to speak in about 15 minutes' time. I'll bet that's another shambles.
Indeed, yes. Well, we're going to be covering it live. I'm sure you'll have the popcorn ready as well, Bill. Lovely to have you on, sir. Nice to speak again, Sir Bill Cash, former Conservative MP, very logical, straightforward speaking bloke. We love Bill, and thank you to Ian Duncan Smith as well. Great voices on this. Over to you, everything you've just heard as well, your wider issues on the question of what should Britain's role be in this war. Your thoughts, and also Shabana Mahmood's idea of giving failed asylum families around about £40,000 to return to their place of origin because they failed here. She says it'll be cheaper, so quids in. Well, no, it's still massively expensive, and we're paying for it. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
No doubt that the British government has acted in an incredibly weak, equivocal way. It's easy to start a war, very difficult to ensure that the aftermath doesn't descend into complete chaos.
What's your view of that outburst of Trump?
Well, Trump doesn't mince his words, but I think his criticism is justified. I mean, we should have realised where our national interests stood, and he should have expressed immediate support.
We have pursued a ludicrous energy policy, I mean, preceding this government, frankly, and all the knock-on effects to that for our economy are catastrophic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 10 to 2. This one in from Drew, who says that I'm British born and bred. As it stands right now, they can pay me 40,000 quid and I'll leave. As for the war, the only thing Starmer should have said to Mr Trump is, what do you need? When do you want it? We should have been over there when the so-called negotiations were going on. We now look so weak. Such a shame for the UK people. Love the show. You know what, though? I think Starmer... I mean, you could say, I suppose, you could say... And I don't like using the phrase, in fairness to Starmer, but you could say that actually Starmer wanted to assist the Americans, but his cabinet stopped him from doing it. But of course, he's not then strong enough to be able to resist that, because what then happens is there's a rebellion and his career goes out the window because somebody mounts a leadership campaign and then all hell breaks loose. But I genuinely think there is a school of thought here, and the Hermers of this world love it. I think they quite like us in a fairly weakened position. I think it sort of suits their politics that the United Kingdom is not riding high, it's not prominent, it's not steering anything, it's not at the front of the queue when it comes to helping out on big international matters. I think they quite like the subservience, having had a history of dominance. That suits their politics down to the ground. Don't let that sound like a mere distraction. I think it informs everything these people are doing. It was interesting hearing Bill Cash talk about the power of the role of Attorney General. Absolutely huge. Malcolm is in Devon. Back to that issue of migrants and a matter of 40,000 quid a pop. Malcolm, what have you got for us? Hi.
Well, hello, Ian. I was just sort of wondering what happens if some clever terrorist group decide that they can make 20 grand out of this, send somebody over from France because they ain't doing bugger all about nothing, and then turn around and say that within 6 months you'll be back here and I want 20 grand off you.
Yes, that's right. Well, you can imagine right now there are people sitting there with their little ready reckoners trying to work out, is there a way that I can get in the queue for 40k?
Yeah, there's got to be a business plan that somebody can put together, somebody that's clever than the Labour Party.
Well,
and it really upsets me to think that you're turning around and saying that you are just sort of praising them, and please don't do that or I'll stop listening to you.
Well, I was trying to work out, Starmer must have said we must help the Americans in order for Ed Miliband to lose his mind. So do we say, it doesn't give house points to Starmer really, but it does expose what his original position was.
Well, a prat.
Yeah, well, yes, I think that's immovable. I think that's
that's a given, isn't it?
That's just a given, yes. I mean, and you were very polite in what you said there. We could have gone further, of course.
Oh God, yeah, but I'm on air. So
you are on, indeed.
With all this Iranian thing, as a 23-year veteran who was in Cyprus, I am utterly embarrassed about what this bunch of lefty woke muppets and that idiot in charge of our country have done, have said, and are acting. And I am embarrassed. I want Trump and everybody else around the world to understand that when he says the UK have not been our friends, that's wrong. It's the Labour left woke people in our society that will be.
Well, I'd like to think, Malcolm.
Alongside them.
I got it, Malcolm. Your phone line is almost dying on us, but you got most of it out there. Thank you very much for starting us off. You're absolutely right. We need the world to know that this government does not define us as a people. It doesn't define us in any shape or form. Even people that voted for Keir Starmer, I think, would say on a good day, that's not us. That's not really who we are. And when you look back at the stories of leaders, and I know you have to bring Blair into it. He's come up a lot in the last week for obvious reasons. You put Thatcher in there as well. You'd naturally put Churchill. You look at decisive governments who have a philosophy behind them, an underpinning idea of the direction and where they're going. And you look at that and the decisions that are made, whether you supported them or not, but the decisiveness and the forthright thinking and the firm, authoritative, calm and measured way in which they would execute their ideas compared to what we currently have. And you hear that clip of Keir Starmer, I did not go into, we're not going to help. We're not going to do, it will only be defence. I mean, it's just woeful. John's in Wiltshire. John, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Ian, good afternoon. I'm just back from Dubai.
Hey! I was about there should be like a firework go off there, or maybe it's inappropriate for a firework, but you take my point. There should be some kind of music. Tell us about that. Was it did you just go to the airport and come home, or was there a bit of a faff beforehand?
I've got to say, Emirates Airline were brilliant.
Yep.
I booked a holiday through them. Absolutely fantastic. They did brilliantly, given the situation. The FCA were shambles, of course.
Yeah.
Absolute shambles. You can go to Amman. Oh, those people who went to Amman. Oh, we've got a charter flight. Apparently, the pilot was out of hours. I don't know. Lots of rumours.
Yeah. Did you get on your booked flight, pretty much?
Sorry, what was that? Sorry.
Did you manage to get on the flight you were meant to be coming home on anyway, or was it delayed, or was it a few days later?
3 days. 3 days. We should have flown home on Sunday with Emirates. We flew home last night, scheduled, but 3 days late.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, that was, I think we can all understand that in the wake of what's going on.
I'll do great. I mean, I think they were working effectively after day one, first in, first out, just about, and people with medical issues.
Yeah. Were you? Did you have concerns flying?
No.
No. And did they?
Military, so I mean, they went overland to avoid the American fleet, which I thought was the best.
I was about to say, they obviously altered the route.
Yeah. They went west and then north.
Because I've flown that journey and with Emirates a few times, and I always remember the first time somebody saying, if you look out your window now, you can see the mountains of Iran. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. There's Iran, and I can see it, and isn't that incredible? That's something you wouldn't want to hear right now.
No, but I tell you, I mean, obviously we had the UAE military jets overhead. That's reassuring. We look at Flight Radar 24, there's maritime aircraft scouring for boats of the wrong nation. So, they've got it all squared away. And guess what? UK is a shambles.
Yeah, I mean, isn't
After
that...
23 years military service, I'm ashamed to be called...
It's very weird, isn't it? I mean, how have we kind of descended into this? And, I said it before, you don't have to like a particular leader, but you can respect one, right? And unfortunately, we've got none of that with this one.
No, I mean, luckily I didn't vote for Labour. I voted Conservative because he helped me over a legal issue. And
fair point.
But that was, I had to choose something, but I certainly would never have chosen. I hope everyone who chose Labour or completely embarrassed, because it was always going to happen. They're a bunch of Marxists, aren't they?
Yeah, it was always going to happen, which I was surprised. I understand a protest vote. I understand why some people got peed off with the Tories and thought, don't want to do that anymore. But I could never quite work out why they lent their vote to Labour. I mean, that to me, I had no idea. I do this for a living, John. I had no idea what Keir Starmer stood for. Not at all.
They do it every time. You got Brown who sold up the gold cheap.
Yep.
They wreck the country every time they come in.
Well, they've done it at lightning speed this time. That's, I suppose, the difference, isn't it?
They got a gold star, a Muttley medal or two for this one.
A Muttley medal. Oh, God. Absolute, a classic bit of retro referencing there. John, thank you very much. Glad you're back home safe and well, too. John in Wiltshire flew back from Dubai last night. The airline were fantastic. Few days late. Everything other than that, bang on and tickety-boo. Thank you to John in Wiltshire. Back to you, 0344 499 1000. We will take calls on what should Britain's role be in this war. I mean, should it escalate? Would you support our assistance in physical military capabilities, whether that's from the sky or on the ground? And we are about to hear from the Prime Minister. So after the news headlines, we cross over to Downing Street. It's a live press conference. One assumes a bit of an update on what is happening in Iran, as much as Starmer's allowed to know, perhaps. But we'll get the detail and we'll bring you the full thing in a few moments' time. You want to get in touch, 0344 499 1000. You can leave a voice note there as well. Right now, 2 o'clock, let's get the latest news headlines.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. We are, of course, responding to day 6 of the Iranian war. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch wants the RAF to target and destroy Iran's missile site to halt launches against allies. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has been criticised left, right and centre for not backing that initial US-Israel strike on the Iranian regime over the weekend. He's not going to live this down. It's going to follow him around throughout the course of this campaign, and so it should do. More on that and, of course, your response too. Also, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has been speaking just a couple of hours ago, announcing a major immigration reform which involves offering asylum seeker families up to £40,000 to voluntarily leave the UK or face forced removal. Right, or face forced... So you could have forced removal, but it's better to give you... I mean, really? That's where we're at? Talking of things that are upside down and a bit strange, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has proposed that left-wing parties all work together in some kind of nice cohort of Marxists, working together to counter reform's growing influence, they say, fueling a coalition of chaos fears. OK, more on that as well. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. And we're about to cross to Downing Street to get that press conference from Keir Starmer.
Continue to coordinate our response to the situation in Iran and the Middle East. I know that people are worried sick about their family and friends who are caught up in this, about the impact on our lives and our economy, and about the potential for even greater escalation. They can hardly believe that yet again we're seeing missiles and drones falling and civilians in the firing line across the region. So I want to reassure the British public about the action that we're taking. While the region has been plunged into chaos, my focus is providing calm, level-headed leadership in the national interest. That means deploying our military and diplomatic strength to protect our people. And it means having the strength to stand firm by our values and our principles, no matter the pressure to do otherwise. The long-standing British position is that the best way forward for the regime and the world is a negotiated settlement with Iran where they give up their nuclear ambitions. Now, that's why I took the decision that the UK would not join the initial strikes on Iran by the US and Israel. Now, that decision was deliberate. It was in the national interest, and I stand by it. But when Iran started attacking countries around the Gulf and the wider region, the situation changed. Iran has now fired drones and missiles at 10 countries that did not attack them. These are allies of the UK, where we have hundreds of thousands of British people, as well as British military personnel. Our number one priority is protecting our people. And that's why, long before the US and Israeli action last weekend, we had already deployed additional military capabilities to the region to defend our interests. And I want to pay tribute to our brilliant armed forces. Throughout January and February, we were moving defensive assets to Cyprus and Qatar. Fighter jets, air defence missiles, advanced radar, and systems to take down drones, to ensure we were in a heightened state of readiness in advance of any conflict beginning. When the strikes began on Saturday, we immediately put those jets into the sky. on a mission to protect our people and our allies in the region. And that is what they have done, flying over Cyprus and the wider region, shooting down multiple drones, at least one of which was heading towards a base housing British military personnel. Our jets were in the sky again last night, over Jordan, Qatar and other partners, refuelling in the air to prolong their mission. And we're constantly resupplying our jets and our missile stores. And we are responding to requests from allies in the region for further help. I can announce today that we're sending 4 additional Typhoon jets to join our squadron in Qatar, to strengthen our defensive operations in Qatar and across the region. Wildcat helicopters with anti-drone capabilities are arriving in Cyprus tomorrow. The Defence Secretary is on the ground in Cyprus right now, coordinating our work and our brave servicemen and women. We're deploying HMS Dragon to the Mediterranean. And we have allowed the US to use British bases to conduct defensive operations to take out Iranian missiles before they're fired at our people and our allies. We will maintain this shield over British people in the region and our allies. We are working to strengthen it every day. And we're working as fast as possible to get our people out. As of today, over 140,000 individuals in the region have registered their presence, enabling us to get them the information and the support that they need. We have rapid deployment teams on the ground in Oman and Saudi Arabia. And our consular teams are helping hundreds of the most vulnerable individuals. Despite airspace closures, we're working around the clock with airlines, travel companies and governments to open safe routes home. More than 4,000 people have now arrived back in the United Kingdom on commercial flights from the UAE, including vulnerable Brits identified by our teams. A further 7 flights are due to leave the UAE for the UK today. And I can report that our first charter flight from Oman took off a few minutes ago. We will lay on additional charter flights in the coming days. British Airways is putting on daily flights from Oman, and we will keep working with all of our partners to increase the speed and capacity of this airlift. I want to be very clear. This is a huge undertaking. It's one of the biggest operations of its kind, many times bigger than the evacuation from Afghanistan. It's not going to happen overnight, but we will not stop until our people are safe. I also want to say a word about the economic impact. Iran is targeting oil and gas facilities in the Gulf and tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, trying to inflict economic pain around the world. So we will continue to work with the industries affected and our allies to respond to any impact. And this is where the long-term changes that we're delivering for the British people are paying off. We have the right plan for defence, delivering the biggest increase in defence spending since the Cold War, to strengthen our armed forces and keep people safe. We have the right plan for our economy. As the Chancellor said on Tuesday, we're sticking to that plan so we can cut energy bills and help keeping families with the cost of living and helping them. We also have the right plan for our energy supplies, building up clean British energy like never before, decreasing our dependence on volatile international markets, and creating the energy security and independence that we need. Faced with this new geopolitical crisis, The sad fact is that some will try to use it to divide us. That's why the government is reaching out to communities across the United Kingdom, Jewish and Muslim alike, making sure that communities and places of worship have appropriate protective security in place. But look, as a nation, we should come together in this moment. Those citizens that are stuck in the region, scared and in need of help, come from all backgrounds. The armed forces who protect them come from all backgrounds too. We are united by our common humanity and our love of this country. This conflict could continue for some time. So I want you to know that your government is resolute in our response, at home and abroad. We will do everything we can to protect British lives, uphold British values, and safeguard the national interest. Thank you. And now I'll take some questions. And I've got Chris, BBC first, please.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason at BBC News. Can you address directly those at home and abroad who see your response and see indecision, prevarication and a lack of preparedness? Thank you.
Yes, let me address that, because, as I said a moment ago, we started pre-deploying to the region in January and February, particularly to Cyprus and Qatar, and that was fighter jets, air defence missiles, advanced radar and anti-drone systems. Now, we did that during the course of 8 or so weeks. We did that in conjunction with the US and with our allies, and we continue to bolster the capability that we have there to keep our people safe. So there's been a lot of pre-planning gone into this, a lot of pre-deployment that's gone into this, and I'm satisfied that we can keep our people safe, and we're working very hard to make sure that wherever people have registered their presence, we can help them with the information that they need and the support they need, and get them back to the United Kingdom as quickly and as safely as possible. Thank you, Chris. Robert Peston, ITV.
Yeah, Robert Peston, ITV. Prime Minister, I was very struck by your choice of words. You said that you stand by what you called your initial decision not to join the offensive operations of Israel and America against Iran. Does that mean that decision is subject to review? You're concentrating at the moment on defensive military activity, but could it turn into offensive activity?
Well, as you will understand, we're working with our allies and with the US on this. We've been doing that for some time. The pre-deployment was done in conjunction and in discussion with our allies and with the US. And we have that capacity in the region that we pre-deployed to the region, and we're bolstering that in the way that I've set out today. The US are using the basis to do these strikes into Iran to take out the capability to launch the strikes in the first place. So that is the configuration, that is the understanding and arrangements that we've got in place. Thank you, Robert. Beth, can I come to you?
Oh, thank you. Prime Minister, this escalating war is really frightening people that are watching today. President Trump says it will go on for 4 to 5 weeks. You've just said it will be some time. Do you have any sense of how long it could go on for? Do you agree with President Trump? What's your message to the British people worried about how it's going to affect their lives? Can you give them any reassurance that you'll help them on energy prices? And just secondly, on military operations, there's much unhappiness that military personnel and their families were left unprotected on the Cyprus airbase that was struck at the weekend. What went wrong, and do you apologise to them? Thank you.
Well, Beth, let me say, which is that our absolute priority is the safety of our citizens. And that is the focus for all the decisions that I have taken, including the decisions to pre-deploy in the way that I've described, and the decisions we're taking every day in order to deal with the situation on the ground in the region, the consular work to get people safely back home, and also what we're doing within the country, obviously, in relation to the division that can arise in situations like this. In relation to Cyprus, we've obviously had an airbase there for a very long time. There are protective measures in place, have always been in place. It's always been a protected airbase. It's not something new to protect the airbase. We pre-deployed further assets to Cyprus in January and February for that purpose, and we're bolstering that. So I want to be really clear to everybody in Cyprus that we're taking every measure that is needed to protect them, to protect the airbase, along with the other places in the region. Thank you very much.
That's the Prime Minister. He's given that speech there at, it's actually number 9 Downing Street. It's the media centre next to his residence, taking questions and the statement, the update. I don't think we gleaned an amazing amount from that. We must have strength to stand by principles no matter pressure, no matter what pressure there is to do otherwise, he said. Who's he aiming that at? We'll get a word from Norman Baker on this and a few other of the big stories of the day as well in a few moments. 0344 499 1000. You were listening there to the Prime Minister. So, I'm sorry, that's 15 minutes of your life you'll never get back, all right? I'll just tell you that right now. But, you know, you have to take these things. You never know if he's going to drop some kind of, you know, bizarre curveball into the equation. More from you on the way. Coming up on 20 past 2, this is Talk.
No doubt that the British government has acted in an incredibly weak, equivocal way. It's easy to start a war, very difficult to ensure that the aftermath doesn't descend into complete chaos.
What's your view of that outburst of Trump?
Well, Trump doesn't mince his words, but I think his criticism is justified. I mean, we should have realised where our national interest stood, and he should have expressed immediate support.
We have pursued a ludicrous energy policy, I mean, preceding this government, frankly, and all the knock-on effects to that for our economy are catastrophic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 20 past 2. There's a lot to talk to. Let's get a word from Norman Baker, former Home Office Minister. Regularly helps us out on various issues. Norman, good afternoon to you. Just before we delve into Shabana Mahmood and her speech this morning, where we just heard the Prime Minister speaking, I suppose you could call it an update on what is happening with Iran. What did you take from that?
Well, I'm not a great fan of the Prime Minister, as you know, Ian, but I thought that was a reasonable contribution he made. It was statesmanlike, which is not a word I usually use with the Prime Minister. And I think the balance he's trying to strike between keeping the Americans vaguely on board and also looking after the national interest is right. I do find it extraordinary when people say that automatically he should follow US policy. I mean, we are an independent country after all, and we have to look at what's in our national interest. I recall back in the 1960s when I was a young lad,
that Harold Wilson famously refused to send British troops to Vietnam, despite American pressure at the time. And that turned out to be a very wise decision indeed. So I think he set out the process last week that we should stick to international law. It's clearly illegal internationally to try and secure a regime change. And more to the point, I mean, it's not quite clear for the Americans what they're trying to achieve and what the end game is, what they actually want at the end. So I think we have to be slightly careful not to get carried away by this. So I think that on balance, he's not too far from the right position.
But it appeared that he might have had a different position at the beginning, and then, you know, as far as we can understand, Norman, there was a bit of what they often call a cabinet revolt. I'm sure those that were there say, well, not really, no, it's just a few people had a grumble. Who knows? You know how these things get reported, but it seems that Ed Miliband lost his mind during this, and then, you know, an almighty fallout which could have led to a bigger rebellion, could have led to a leadership challenge, and all of these things. So Starmer kind of did a sort of reverse ferret instantly, and then did another reverse ferret a couple of days later.
Well, I mean, I don't know what's happening in Cabinet. That may well be true, Ian, because obviously there are different views on what should be occurring here. I mean, clearly we've got to defend our own interests in Cyprus and everywhere else, and it's important that we have the facilities to make sure that we resist any Iranian attacks on British bases or indeed on British citizens wherever they are. It's one step further, however, to say we should allow the Americans to use our facilities for so-called defensive purposes. I mean, who's going to monitor what's defensive and what's offensive? So I think having started from a very clear position, he has gone down a bit of a slippery slope.
Yeah, I was, you know, when I was listening to that speech, the one we just heard, I kept thinking, Norman, is he trying to play catch-up here? Is he sort of trying to do a reset that, look, I seem to have upset my backbenchers, I seem to have upset the Americans, I seem to have upset most countries in the UAE, so I better start again. That's how I took it.
Well, I think that you're not too wrong. I mean, I think in presentational terms, he has been subject to criticism, not always fairly, actually, on this matter, but he has been subject to criticism from left and from right. And he will have concluded, perhaps, he hasn't got his message across properly. And that's the purpose of the press conference today, to try to reset that, as you say.
Let's move to this story. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, announcing a new pilot scheme today. In fact, she had quite a lot of things to say about immigration. One of them was this idea, Norman, to offer asylum-seeking families £40,000 to voluntarily leave Britain. The programme offers a maximum £10,000 per person. So if you're looking at husband and wife and kids, that's what it would come to. Let's have a listen to some of what she said today.
There is ample space for a migration system that is fair, but where it needs to be, firm. There can be both compassion and control in a system that rewards contribution and those who play by the rules.
All obvious stuff. I mean, there's a few platitudes in there, Norman. When isn't there in a political speech? You know the Home Office well. You were a minister in that department. Look, you can never please everyone on these things, and sometimes the problem with that is that you end up pleasing no one at all.
Well, she's softening her language, I think, as a consequence of the by-election last week, which was lost by Labour to the Greens, and they'll have concluded politically, I think, the Labour Party, that they have to move back towards the centre or the left because it's not working. They're losing the progressive vote to the Lib Dems and the Greens. So I think that's the political message that's coming out of this. In terms of the substance of it, look, I mean, I saw in the papers this morning, you're talking about giving people the right to work if they've been here over a year. Why are they here over a year? You know, what's wrong with the system? They can't process people more quickly. If people genuinely want to claim asylum and they are deemed to be vulnerable, then they should be accommodated as soon as possible. And if they're not genuine, should be removed from the country. You know, why are they here for so long? And the reason, I'll answer my own question, the reason is because the previous Conservative government had a policy, and I know this from my own time, of deliberately slowing down the decision-making on asylum claims in order to make life uncomfortable, which they saw as a disincentive. I think it's completely mad policy. What you should do is make sure people are determined their status as quickly as possible. And I would say, actually, I'm in favour of people who claim asylum or who are over here working. It's you know, why should we support people from the taxpayer to be in hotels and do nothing? If they're going to be here for a short period of time at least, let's have them working, give them some status in terms of some self-respect, but also some money into the taxpayer in terms of taxation.
Would it come to that, though? I mean, I don't want to stereotype every person that comes across on a boat, but I don't know how many brain surgeons or scientists are on those kind of journeys. You sort of get the impression that you may well be talking about very low-skilled people whose contribution with respect to anyone who has an enthusiasm to work and better their life, I get all of that, but you might be in a position where someone's on such a miserable low wage that they contribute nothing and still continue to clearly dine out on the taxpayer in terms of their accommodation and other issues that come their way. So it may well be shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, I think there are some brain surgeons as well as some people who are very low skilled. I mean, I think there's a complete mixture, and certainly people who've been subject to political pressure in their own countries, who stood up for democracy, for example, they may all be brain surgeons and doctors. But anyway, look, I mean, the point is, if you start the other end of the telescope, if you process these people quickly, which had never been done for decades, process them quickly so you determine what their status is. And if they're not, they shouldn't be here, they can be removed as quickly as possible. And that would reduce the pressure on all these communities around the country. Instead of having people sitting here for up to a year or more not being processed, let's get that system working properly. And if they are deemed to be okay, get them working and paying tax.
I agree with that. You're absolutely right. The system was slowed down for grinding to a halt during the Tory years. When you were in the Home Office, Norman, was that something that was palpable? Were you aware of that? Was it a directive? Were you told, right, don't go too fast on this, guys, because we need to make sure that we create a whatever they were trying to create, an environment that nobody wants to be in, whatever it was. But was that explicitly said or just hinted at?
Yes, it was clear there was a hostile environment. That was what Theresa May wanted when she was Home Secretary.
Yeah.
I wasn't the immigration minister, so my room for manoeuvre on that area was limited. I was a crime prevention minister, which is a totally different part of the Home Office. But I was aware that that this was a strategy to try and make life uncomfortable and use that as an incentive for people not to come. Mad. It wasn't going to work.
And it hasn't worked, and look where we are. Norman, thank you very much indeed for your time as ever. Former Home Office Minister Norman Baker with us on the programme. There is always that debate about whether asylum seekers should be allowed to go to work, and I think I'm right in saying that it's kind of divided around the world. Some EU countries allow it, some don't allow it. I don't know what kind of results you would get. I would almost stake my life on the fact that I don't think a brain surgeon ever came over on one of those boats. I don't believe that happened. I sense you will probably be looking at those with low-skilled labour. I don't know what jobs they would do. I don't know what their command of English would be in order to get those jobs, so I don't imagine that would end in any kind of significant sea change of the problem. You might have some people who dive straight into it, get a job. So I just can't see that panning out in any useful way, certainly not useful for the taxpayer. So you would still be, these aren't people who are going to get a job and then from their wages rent a house, and from that they're going to, buy a car and start contributing to the economy and spending money and going on holiday. That's not going to happen. It's an idea that some people on the left, I say that to Norman, who's a friend of the station, Norman Baker. He regularly comes on. You throw anything you like at Norman, but he bats from that particular part of the spectrum. I think it's an idea that sounds, get these people working, they'll have a stake in society. It'll be a great way to begin a new life, knowing that hard work pays. I just don't see that becoming something that would come to anything, frankly, looking at what we'd be dealing with. 0344 499 1000. We'll have more from you in a couple of moments' time. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 2:30. Why does Starmer give a broadcast about Iran and then start waffling about the economy? What a drip, says Pete the Mole. I just had to turn off, says James from Plymouth, listening to Keith's address. Don't want to smash my radio. It's a traitor weak chin bean counter. I need a lie down. Yes, I don't blame you for feeling like that. We now know, of course, there are other implications beyond Keir Starmer's decision or indecision, however you wish to look at it, at the weekend. Britain, Bahrain, the UAE, Cyprus reportedly criticising the Prime Minister and his response to the Middle East security, feeling the UK's measures were inadequate in protecting the region and British citizens from Iranian missile attacks. He has, of course, I would imagine in his words, in the last 20 minutes, clarified, sending 4 new fighter jets to Qatar and confirming that flights have left Oman. So he says now, don't worry, I'm on it. But of course, when there is a war on, and we are now involved, whatever way you wish to slice it, there is a huge price to pay, and that isn't just the cost of flights and bombs and other military plant that's required. The knock-on effects are huge. Let's get a word from Lord Robert Skidelsky, crossbench peer. Robert, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. War, it's an expensive thing, right? You don't get much change out of a few quid for a war. And, you know, even if you're just sending a few planes and the odd boat, it costs, to coin a phrase, a ton of cash.
It does. And what's more, there's a very little prospect of limiting Britain's involvement. And Keir Starmer says, as you just said, our preparations are purely defensive. Our commitment is purely defensive. What he's never said, which is what Macron and France said, and Sanchez of Spain, that this is an illegal war. They said this was an illegal operation by the United States and Israel. But Starmer's never said that. What he said is we won't take part in it, but we will use our forces for purely defensive purposes. But it's almost impossible to make that distinction.
Of course.
Iran was bound to retaliate in the way it could.
Yes.
And British forces were bound to be involved, British personnel, British bases, and so on. So, I mean, the defensive passed to the offensive very quickly.
Well, indeed, and you know, one could reasonably argue that if you're part of the defensive element of it, you're part of it, right? I mean, you're up to your neck in it, the same as anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, we did not take a principled stand against the bombing of Iran, and therefore we had to straddle some middle ground between not taking part in it, but being prepared to get involved if the situation demanded. That's the short of it.
Indeed. In terms of knock-on effects, I mean, there's the obvious stuff. Filling up your car with petrol costs a few more quid now, even though those pesky petrol stations are still using their same supplies, but doesn't stop them notching the price up. Where else do these stories go in terms of the economics of it, and what happens, if you like, on Civvy Street?
Well, I mean, the direct effects, of course, will be a big increase in the cost of living, and that will hit Rachel Reeves's programme of recovery. I mean, that's the immediate effect on Britain. It'll also actually have those effects on other European countries. It won't on the United States, because the United States is self-sufficient in oil and gas. But on all the countries that rely on imports, there'll be a price effect. And if the Iranians manage to close the Straits of Hormuz, that'll affect the traffic of oil to Western Europe. So, I mean, those will be effects. But more broadly, what we're seeing is a kind of retreat from a sort of liberal open system into one in which we divide the world into friends and enemies. And economics is constricted into that sort of kind of circle. And that's very bad because, you know, I mean, it's on a liberal world order that we ultimately rely for our prosperity. And if that's cut in half, then there's bound to be big collateral damage to our economy and to the economies, particularly of Europe.
And I guess, you know, this is sort of day one, I mean, day 6, literally, but, you know, the very beginning. We don't yet know whether this is something that's going to be over in a couple of weeks or whether we're in for the long haul.
So the question is, what is American-Israeli endgame here? I think it is to destroy Iran. To destroy any political forces in Iran which might be hostile in future, become an enemy of Israel, and that's impossible. I mean, there are far too many people in Iran who will actually support their government in this situation. If someone was bombing your country, then whatever your feelings about the government, the natural instinct is to rally. And the idea that you can, within a few days, replace the existing regime with someone like the Shah, and install something is a pipe dream. We saw that pipe dream in Iraq, we saw it in Syria, and we saw it in Afghanistan. These interventions, which are designed to be short and sharp and lead to the installation of a democratic regime, ones that supports our values, is just not on. It doesn't happen that way, and it won't happen that way in Iran. And therefore, the prospect is prolonged violence and disorder throughout the Middle East.
Does that not rather depend on the appetite of the Iranian people? I mean, certainly, if, to be fair, look, me interviewing a few Iranians who want to see the regime toppled, who support the Americans, that doesn't define perhaps everybody's view, but there does seem to be a real appetite to get rid of, well, we now have got rid of the Supreme Leader, but to get rid of him and all the others and replace him. And it might be a quirk of contemporary life that he's being replaced by somebody whose old man was kicked out in the late 70s. But nonetheless, a change, it seems, is desperately needed and supported. So could you be wrong on this one, Robert?
I mean, my principle is a very general one. If a foreign power starts bombing your country, then whatever you think about the regime, it's not going to be an easy matter to replace it by a regime that has supported the bombing.
Indeed, but it's not any old country, is it? I mean, this is not, you know, the Isle of Wight or, you know, south of France. It's Iran.
If Russia stopped bombing Britain, started bombing Britain, then whatever the political divisions in this country, everyone would rally around. I mean, I'm not saying it's an identical situation because there aren't free elections and all that sort of thing in Iran, but the instinct to defend your country against a foreign foe is deeply embedded in any population.
But indeed, but is there not, you know, it's a bit like sort of international law being seen as, and we spoke to various speakers on this today and have done all week, that there is a different malleability, a flexibility, if you like, in international law compared to domestic law. It doesn't carry the same rigidity in many senses. It's dependent on context, it's dependent on circumstance. And one could create an argument, Robert, that is, look, this is Iran. It's known to be the greatest sponsor of state terrorism anywhere on planet Earth. It is largely responsible for most of the problems in the Middle East, and we'd be better off without it there, because it's not just a threat to Israel, but it's a threat to other countries in that region and the wider world. So it's very much an exceptional case. Does that wash with you?
Yeah, but you can't take international law into your own hands. I mean, that's a contradiction. I mean, international law has not got an enforcing mechanism. The United Nations is not involved in this. Many countries, probably most countries, think the invasion is illegal. And an illegal defense of international law is a contradiction in terms.
But if Israel would say, hang on, no, this is very much a defensive operation from our perspective. People can say whatever they like about Gaza and what has happened there, and that does divide the room, I understand that. But they could construct a reasoned argument that actually Iran is the feeder nation for all of this, Hamas, Hezbollah, and others, Houthis, you name it, all down to Iran. So Israel have a right to defend that position, and America have the right to support Israel.
Well, not all. I mean, I don't think that's right, but that's not international law.
But they wouldn't be breaching international law in that case?
Well, who decides on the breach of international law?
Well, that rather highlights the flexibility issue that I mentioned on international law.
Yeah, reflects the ambiguity. And what's more, on this particular occasion, the attack took place at the moment when Iran and the United States were still in negotiation about their nuclear future. So, I mean, why did it happen at that point? It happened at that point, I think, and this has been admitted by Secretary of State Rubio, because the Israelis planned to attack. And he said the United States had to be part of that to avoid greater destruction. So in a way, what was being said? International law was being proclaimed by Israel, and the United States was supporting it. That's completely contrary to the so-called defense of our homeland, which was the subject of Trump's strategic agenda, where we would defend the interests of the United States. Here we're defending the interests of Israel, which was thought to be exactly the same as the interests of the United States. I mean, to me, the whole thing is, I think the idea of international law here is a distraction, because international law must have a properly recognized enforcing authority, and that isn't the exertions of a single power that proclaims that international law is being broken and demands the right to remedy that situation. That can't be international law.
Final question, Robert. What is your instinct telling you about the longevity of this? I keep referencing Donald Trump's core belief that initially this would be very swift, it would be very quick. Are you sensing that? And quick could mean, a few weeks, or are we, as in the wider world, in for the long haul here?
Well, what's the longevity of the intervention? What was the longevity of the intervention in Iraq, which was expected to be short, in Afghanistan? What's happened is that a shambles has been created, and the repercussions of that go on. Now here, it's much more serious, because the whole of the Middle East is somehow involved in this. How are other countries in the Middle East going to react to the prospect of America claiming the right to intervene whenever something's going on which it doesn't like or which Israel doesn't like? It could go on a long time, and it will be very destructive, more destructive than already the interventions have been of life in the Middle East. So I don't see it ending quickly. I don't see it being in and out in a few days. It can't be. It's going to be a long haul, and what the end result is going to be is in anyone's, it's up to, you can't say. All I can say is I feel that the situation is very bleak, and I regret very much that the United States felt it had to do this.
Lord Robert Skidelsky, thank you, sir, for your time. Really appreciate that. He's a crossbench peer. His thoughts, not too enamoured with the initial US response, but we are where we are, as the phrase goes. Couple of comments quickly before we pause. Paul says, no harm to Norman Baker, but I don't fancy brain surgery from some of the recent boat arrivals. Well, it was pointed out by many people that it would be unlikely. Robbie makes this point. Your guest just said there are some brain surgeons on the boats. Why would a brain surgeon need to get a boat? They're top earners in every part of the world. They could fly legally anywhere in the world. Yes, you could. You could, and even if you're in a country where you can't just leave, because they would question your leaving. Iran would have been one of those countries. Where are you going? Well, why have you got a one-way ticket? Make your way to another country, as these people did, and from there you could fly off. If you got $3,000 for a rubber dinghy, you got $3,000 for a BA flight from wherever you wound up in southern Italy or whatever it happens to be. And Pete the Mole says, I'm white British Christian. Disgusting. I'm fed up with the weather here and the economy. Can I have 40,000 quid to leave the country, please, and spend my old age in a warm country? Well, you could give it a go, Pete, but you are a white British Christian, so I doubt whether you would qualify, frankly, for anything. I certainly get the idea. 40,000 quid to a family to leg it back to where they should have been in the first place. That's Shabana Mahmood's new idea. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000 on this very issue. Let's get a voice note from Adrian on the Isle of Wight.
I just saw that story about 40 grand to leave the country with your family. Well, my bags are packed. I'm not a failed asylum seeker, but I'm thinking about getting on a boat, popping over to Dover, getting off, applying for asylum, which they will refuse me because I'm already a British citizen, demand my 40 grand, and then I'll go off somewhere sunny, like a little island. Chagos, maybe.
Sounds like another whinging white man, doesn't it, eh? Loads of them out there today. Sadia is in Market Harbour on this very point.
Good afternoon, Ian. If a failed asylum claimant has failed their case, why are they getting paid £40,000 to go back to where they came from? That is just ludicrous. I mean, I just can't believe it. And then they'll try again.
That would, in theory, that would be a family of 4, so you get 10 grand each. And the only reason I can think that they are offering it is because if they don't offer it, then the family of 4 hang around, mount God knows how many appeals against their refusal to have been granted asylum. Those appeals can be incredibly expensive, and of course they can be, perhaps more troublingly, very lengthy in their time. So I sense that is possibly the thinking behind it, but I don't know. Thank you, Sadia, for that. 0344 499 1000.
No doubt that the British government has acted in an incredibly weak, equivocal way. It's easy to start a war, very difficult to ensure that the aftermath doesn't descend into complete chaos.
What's your view of that outburst of Trump?
Well, Trump doesn't mince his words, but I think his criticism is justified. I mean, we should have realised where our national interest stood, and he should have expressed immediate support.
We have pursued a ludicrous energy policy, preceding this government, frankly, and all the knock-on effects to that for our economy are catastrophic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, yes, 10 to 3. We've got the voice of doom very quickly. We'll go back to the calls. Don't go away, Hazel, with you in just a second. Day 3 of the voice of doom, the mystery voice that is political. Remember, the task is trying to identify whose voice it is. Could be young, old, left-wing, right-wing, male, female, who knows, dead or alive even. Have a listen.
There's hardly any experience.
And again.
There's hardly any experience.
There's hardly any what?
There's hardly any experience.
All right, OK. Whose voice is that? 87222. Don't phone, just message 87222. If somebody gets it correct, then obviously we'll tell you who it is after the news at 3. One more time.
There's hardly any experience.
87222. Hazel in Hampshire, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm fine.
Good. What are you thinking?
This thing about sending people back with a pocket full of money.
40k.
What they should do is look at the cost of living and the annual income of the country they're going to. Now, in Eritrea, it's about 50 quid a year or something silly like that, isn't it? So you just give them a year's income that will keep them going in their own country.
That's a really good point, and I would have thought it's a point that somebody might have thought about, because £40,000, I'm pretty sure in Eritrea, as you rightly say, or Cameroon, is probably enough to buy you a principality. I mean, you might be owning the entire estate.
Yeah. So why it should be a year's income that is level and equal to what the people who get there where they live there.
I mean, in theory, it should be nothing at all. But if we're going to play this game, if we're going to play this game, then we should play it, fairly and proportionately and reflective of where that person is returning to.
That's right. I mean, if it is 40 quid a year, you could give them 80 quid. That would be 2 years. It'd be cheaper for us, and it would be a fortune to them.
Would you leg it from these isles for 40,000 quid, Hazel?
No.
No?
No, you couldn't pay me to leave. I love England too much.
Whereabouts in Hampshire are you, Hazel?
Eastleigh.
Eastleigh in Hampshire. Got it. So you don't want to be leaving the mighty Eastleigh.
Well, I haven't lived here that long. I just make myself at home wherever I end up.
Nice.
I started off in Kent. That's where I come from originally.
In where?
Kent.
Oh, Kent. Whereabouts in Kent?
Maidstone.
Good old Maidstone. Gotta love that
Good old
place.
Maidstone.
Gotta
Good
love
old
that
Shepway
place.
State. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't knock it. Listen, Hazel, thank you very much indeed for that. I'm glad you're staying in Blighty, by the way, and not legging it. But that is a great point, isn't it? Surely, when they were working out the numbers on this, would somebody in that meeting at the Home Office must have raised that and gone, do we really need to give a family 40,000 quid to return to Eritrea? £40,000. Richard is down in London. On Iran, Richard, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hey, Ian. Yeah, I just, it's kind of like, in a way, it's a bit of a wake-up call, but I just think we should have really been paying a bit more attention over recent decades, because, I mean, the reality is that our armed forces aren't ready for the sort of action that they need to be ready for. I mean, this idea of the ship having to be dispatched to go down to defend the base in Cyprus, for instance. I mean, a base like that shouldn't need a ship to defend it. It should have defences of its own.
Well, he did say, didn't he, in that speech? He did say it's already I mean, when he says it's already got defence around it, I mean, if I'm sure defence as in the fence, I mean, I'm sure there is a fence there, and it's probably got barbed wire. And if you or I went down there to try and jump it, and I'm sure somebody would drag us down, stick us in a pair of handcuffs, and lob us in a cell. Well, it depends what they mean by defence.
Well,
I don't think they've got fighter jets flying over it all day.
Those national Palestine people did manage to get in an air.
Yes, they did. Yeah, which was just beyond extraordinary.
I mean, there's 2 points here. I mean, people talk about a special relationship. I mean, the special relationship is between America and Israel, because they've got the best missile defences anywhere in the world. Which is why I'm not. In a way, I don't take too much of what Trump says seriously in terms of criticising us. But I mean, the reality is we've spent decades really not spending enough on defence, and I just think it's obviously it's hard for you because you've got to. People keep saying the same sorts of things, but I mean, the questions we've got to ask are, well. Would people pay more tax? Would people accept that we spend less on the NHS or on schools, which we've been paying more and more into for 30 years?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, Ian, the reality is we are not. I mean, it's interesting that the French had to come to our aid in a way over this airbase, because actually France, for all their faults, and they've wasted a lot of money, they still have a very capable military. But our military has just it's almost disappeared, I just think as a nation, we've got to kind of wake up and think, well, actually,
what do we want?
If this goes on, I mean,
yeah. I mean, if we want a better military, we've got to pay for it. If it's going to be, more meaningful and more capable in situations such as this, then it has to come from somewhere. And whether that is an increase in taxation or whether that's a redistribution of existing budgets, I guess, is the central question. Richard, thank you. Lovely to speak. Matt's in Cheshire on the migration issue. What have you got for us, Matt? Hello.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
It was just about the £40,000 payment.
Nice money.
It's well established, I think, that for those that have savings, the average savings of a British family is around £4,000. So this is 10 times that of the average savings of a British family.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, you might as well
from
just
a family that weren't meant to be here in the first place.
It's embezzlement, Ian.
It's a great way to look at it. It does feel very much like a criminal act on the taxpayer.
I mean, obviously, no matter what you do now, if you're basically a foreign family with no links to Britain, you do something illegal and you're quite vile, you will get rewarded by the Labour Party. And hopefully this will be... I think this is probably the most disgusting policy I've ever heard in the history of politics.
I mean, in that long list of things that keep me awake at night, I mean, this one's right up there in terms of how we're unable to solve the crisis of 40-odd thousand, 50,000 people floating across the English Channel in a rubber boat, and we can't solve that. Elon Musk can reverse a rocket back to Earth from space in about 6 minutes. We can't stop a rubber boat.
You could employ a security guard, I'm sure, a 20-stone guy for £40,000 a year.
Not one of those you get at the petrol station, because they don't chase anyone, do they?
I don't think any security guards do anything anymore.
They're mostly not in a fit condition to be chasing anybody, and I say that objectively, I hope. Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Craig says, why not change the law? You can appeal, so if it's no, it's no. You arrive illegally, no application. Seems obvious. Yeah, but you're looking for common sense, Craig, and logic, where, frankly, there is a nothingness void. At the moment, 0344 499 1000. We've got a busy next hour to come. You might want to respond to the Prime Minister. You might want to respond to that initial question, what should Britain's role be in this war in Iran? And Shabana Mahmood's new initiative on 40,000 quid to failed migrant families. Oh, plus the voice of doom. Who is this?
There's hardly any experience.
87222. Hopefully we have an answer after the news at 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. So many stories to look at. We are clearly examining Keir Starmer's latest response to Iran Day 6. This comes as Tory leader Kemi Badenoch wants the RAF to target and destroy Iran's missile sites to halt launches against allies. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has been criticised just about all over the show. Has he managed to allay some of that criticism in that press conference around about an hour ago? I doubt it, but your thoughts on that. Meantime, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has announced a major immigration reform offering failed asylum seeker families up to £40,000 to voluntarily leave the UK or face forced removals. You might think they'd just cut out the 40 grand bit and implement the forced removal. Apparently, that's a bit of a hullabaloo to get to that stage. And Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has proposed left-wing parties work together. That could be Plaid Cymru, SNP, Lib Dems, Labour, of course, and the Greens, in order to offset the growing influence of Reform UK. Can that work? Will that work? Oh, we've just heard Britney Spears has got arrested over there in California. We were kind of thinking, well, wouldn't it be interesting if it was some kind of hate speech thing, that she'd stood there in the middle of the road shouting at the top of her voice that she has a desire to see a very different immigration policy or something like that. There are rumours it's a DUI arrest. That's all we know so far. Do we actually care? Probably not. 0344 499 1000. Did you watch that Britney Spears documentary? I mean, if ever there was a great example why somebody should not be a mum, that was the documentary. And so many people took away, did you notice that? So many people's takeaway was like, oh, poor Britney. Poor Brittany. It's terrible. Yeah, she's had a troubled time. I get all of that. And being that famous, that young and that rich, I understand all of that. But that was not a great advert for her maternal instincts, I have to say. Maybe she's compounding that view in her recent invest. Stand by for the mugshot. It will be on its way anytime in the next hour, I'm sure. 0344 499 1000. Sydney says, it's Bruce says, why do they always seem to find money for immigrants, but when UK people and businesses are concerned, the government is skint? Money for schools, NHS, prisons, etc. Instead of giving away millions to people who don't actually belong in this country in the first place. I mean, it's a very obvious point. And it's one that was written off for many, many years as kind of a bit iffy, that, isn't it? Yeah, what do you mean by that? Who do you vote for? It sort of had all those kind of implications, and it shouldn't. We have to redefine the lexicon in terms of this discussion. Phrases that have been seen for, we need to deport people, seemed like, whoa, don't go there, that's terrible. No, that's fairly standard stuff when you're debating people who should not be here. But we've attached such powerful connotations to these phrases that people are scared to kind of even utter them. And I know of course we know there are right dodgepots who take things too far. But I think we just need to stop, take a deep breath, re-examine honest language that is sometimes, for some people, will be uncomfortable. For some people, it will be brutal, but it will just be honest and it will be objectively true. So, yes, you can have those discussions, and there's nothing wrong with saying those things. But you're absolutely right. I mean, people who do not belong here, that's a fact of life, just said by Bruce there. This one from Michelle, who says, Ian, call me stupid, but the amount of money we've sent to Ukraine, yet there are no funds to have our naval ships sailing. Our Prime Minister is on a parallel universe to us. He so believes the rubbish he spouts. Love the show. Michelle, thank you. Yes, I think he does. And when you get him and Herma and the likes in a room, they're embroiled in this kind of bizarre little echo chamber that revolves around this sort of one issue of things like international law. What was it somebody told us yesterday? Tom Baldwin's biography of Keir Starmer, where apparently, I haven't read it, I'm just re-quoting what was said to us yesterday, where apparently Starmer says, everything about my life is underpinned by human rights and therefore international law and the like. And that kind of rather exposes what I suppose we are seeing unfold and have done over the last 5 days. What about this story as well? Talking about bonkers Britain, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham raising coalition of chaos concerns after suggesting left-wing parties should work together against the growing threat of Reform UK. I mean, that could mean Labour, Greens, Lib Dems, Plaid Cymru, SNP could form a coalition of chaos. Oh yeah, that'll teach them. I'm not so sure. James Price is a former government advisor. I guess, James, and good afternoon to you. I suppose when you look at the polling, if you literally add all the numbers up, then they might clearly create some damage. The question becomes, you know, would a right-wing coalition deliver a greater return than a left-wing coalition? But it does sound like the most ghastly sort of Addams Family type gathering of political beliefs and people that I think we would have ever seen, wouldn't it?
It's an excellent way to put it. I'm not sure who's the weird uncle in the Addams Family. Uncle Fester? I don't know if that, is that meant to be anti-Burnham? I'm not sure.
Maybe, yes.
I think that it is a serious thing we need to think about, because the way that the British electoral system works, it's very hard to get sort of focused and concrete alliances ahead of time, because the nature of first past the post, and there will be a big fight in every single constituency, and every constituency has all sorts of weird things going on in it, that it's hard these days to predict a kind of uniform swing. And older viewers and listeners might remember those kind of swingometers that you used to get on the BBC or whatever back in older elections. But now you've got as many different parties of this, you will start to see people winning seats with a very, very small percentage of that vote. I mean, look at Gordon and Denton, the recent by-election. It's basically two totally different places. And we saw the kind of levels of sectarian campaigning that the Greens did there. Now play that out across all 650 different constituencies. There'll be plenty that this won't really matter. Yep. It'll be a sort of straight fight between two different parties. But then you start getting into the coordination problem of half the people in the Green Party will go, well, I want the Green Party to win, so I should get the Labour lot to vote for me. And the Labour people in that seat, half of them might go, well, I want the Labour Party to win, so half the Greens should vote for me. And so we may just end up with some very, very odd results anyway, as people try and individually triangulate who they want to vote for. And the problem with that is that I suppose we end up with coalitions coming along and being agreed after the fact. That's always what happens, obviously, in Europe. The people vote, and then the politicians go and decide what it is they want. The party that lost the big main election in Germany last year was the SPD. They'd been in government for years. They'd made a hash of it, but because they were also desperate to keep out the AFD, and because the way the maths worked, that failed party gets back into government as a junior coalition partner. So it's going to be a whole mess unless we see two big dominant parties and each the left and right come and emerge. So it may end up, we may hope for a sort of survival of the fittest outcome by the time of the election.
Yeah, and this sort of Addams Family, just to extend that example, Addams Family conglomerate of doom that we would see could be, of course, reflected on the right as well, because we may have, you know, Reform, and then there's sort of much smaller parties who've yet to really make the kind of national difference, although enthusiastic as they are to do more. Restore Britain, Advance UK, you put those together, then you throw the Tories in. I mean, all I can see is one almighty row if you try to put this lot together. We saw what happened in 2010.
Yeah, well, Advance, God bless them, I think polled fewer votes in Gordon and Denton than the monster raving loony party, who would obviously fit right in with the Addams Family, I suppose. Yeah. And when it comes to Restore, I don't think they've got a chance of winning, because the more people see of what some of their outriders are talking about, unfortunately, although I think Rupert Lowe has done some excellent work himself personally, I think that the sort of incredibly hardline approach and the sort of a slightly odd fixation on people's ethnicity, rather than, you know, what are you going to do about the cost of living? What are you going to do to make Britain's borders secure again? Yeah. I think will turn people off. And of course, we all know about the barney that's happened between the leaders of those small parties and the leader of Reform, let alone the kind of no love being lost between Reform and the Conservatives, not least Reform's new so-called shadow Chancellor Rob Jenrick and the Kemi Badenoch beef that they've had for a long time. So those sorts of personalities will also play in the heart of Westminster every bit as much as the different kind of electoral calculation will happen where everybody listening and watching this lives at home.
I've long thought, when you think of the question, you know, can the left outmaneuver the right? I think we are a centre-right people. In fact, I think the human condition is centre-right. You know, I've long felt that, you know, on the left, it's kind of, you sort of join a club on the left and you tick some boxes and I like this, this and this. Whereas, you know, centre-right in its kind of purest form is really about human instinct and what humans do naturally. That's how I sort of see it. And then obviously you have to put some policies around all of those things. I don't think as a country we are a left-wing or a centre-left-wing country. But when it comes to people voting, as we know, and as we saw in 2024, people do weird stuff.
To put it mildly, when you look at the Green Party, I hope that their victory, for example, I don't know, maybe it was the Greens you were thinking about with the weird stuff idea, perhaps. If you look at finally some of the stuff that these people actually believe and talk about, not just the legalization of crack cocaine and heroin, go and look it up, the fact that their deputy leader so bullied a rabbi of Leeds University that the guy's family got death threats and they had to go into hiding, all kinds of mad lunatic stuff that these people believe. They want a Beyonce tax because they don't think that you should have foreign artists and singers flying into the country. They get rid of all of our army bases and turn them into nature reserves. Zach Palansky, who used to be a Lib Dem until quite recently, so maybe he could unite the Greens with the Lib Dems because he doesn't particularly believe in very much. He would fly to Moscow and ask Putin to give up his nuclear weapons. Why didn't the rest of us think of that?
He could be, Zach Palansky could be Thing in the Addams Family, couldn't he? We'd have to chop his hand off first, but I mean, it will be a bit of Zach Palansky.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's a larger number of crawling hands around Westminster than we might ideally like.
That's a very good point. I like it. I like it.
I think, by the way, you're on the substantive point. You're dead on that. The instinct of most of the country is of a kind of centre-right disposition to love your country, to want it to be protected, to want to largely be left alone until and unless you need help, in which case you should get it, but you should only get it if you deserve it, and getting help that you don't deserve does not help you out. These are all kind of fairly fact of life opinions, and when it comes to either those sorts of inclinations and deep philosophies or the more articulated policies, you can see at least that between the Conservatives and Reform there's not a lot of difference at the moment. They both understand the need to get our financial situation sorted. They both understand the need for a military rejuvenation to happen, and so I hope there at least, whereas the Greens hate the Labour Party because they've not been sufficiently pro-Gaza, seemingly the only policy platform the Greens have anymore, and goodness knows if the Lib Dems have ever believed in anything in their lives, at least on the right there is a philosophical unity of beliefs and policy, even if the personalities aren't there yet.
James, great stuff as ever. Great to have you on. Also, nice to see you again, James Price. He's a former government special advisor. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. This from Paul, who's a military veteran and a former police service in Cornwall, who says, Ian, British Prime Ministers, I think it's now fair to say that the last true loyal, decisive, proper Prime Minister we had here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain was in fact Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. That's the be and end all of it. Starmer has to be removed from office now before he does any more damage. Thank you for a great show. Thank you, Paul, for that as well. It's very hard to find. I know some people would advance Blair's name into the pot pre him going mad, but even if you didn't vote for him or like him, he was decisive. And when it came to standing by the Americans, he was absolutely immovable on that. Derek's in Manchester. Back to migration. Derek, what have you got for us? Hi.
Well, I've just listened to the £40,000 business for migrants. Isn't that just an extra incentive for them to come over, on top of all the incentives that they've already got? You know, I mean, how crazy can it be? I mean, if France starts giving 40 grand out, I'm on the first dinghy over to France.
Yeah.
And then the week later, when they've sent me home with me 40 grand in my pocket, a week later I'll go get another dinghy and go over. And that's exactly what these people are going to do here. And for goodness sake, why on earth are they getting legal aid in the first place? Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Honestly, the country has gone absolutely mad. I mean, this is just one instance of it. Obviously.
This is just the big headlines. If we sat here for a couple of hours over a few pints, Derek, we could make a list of about 50 things.
Longer. We'd be drunk.
Yeah, we would. Yes, but what fun we'd have creating the list. I mean, if you look at these numbers, they're
because we'd get thrown out of the pub because a barmaid might be offended.
Yes, because that is now it was going to be an offence, wasn't it? If you offend someone else or somebody overhears you, even if they're not offended, if they think somebody else might be offended, then they can kick you out because you're offensive.
You really couldn't make it up.
You absolutely couldn't. Derek, it's a great call and a great point. Thank you, mate, for that. Just to give you the background from the Home Secretary's, her argument about this scheme, and it's loosely modelled on a similar initiative in Denmark, where they're trying to tackle all this stuff. There's not quite an equivalence between us and Denmark for lots of other different factors, but Mahmood argues that this £40,000 per person, they're going to do a trial, by the way, and they've got 150 families who are expected to take part in the... Did they put an advert out for that, saying, are you a failed asylum seeker who's trying it on? If so, please apply here. Home Secretary, P.O. Box 123, London. And we'd like to know if you want to take part in the scheme. I mean, you'd have more people applying for it than X Factor, wouldn't you? It'd be like the big queues around the block. Me, please. Please pick me. Who gets the golden buzzer? Well, the golden buzzer will give you £40,000 as a family. The argument is it will save the taxpayer as much as £20 million because, and this is how bonkers it is, because it would cost the state some £158,000 to house that same family every year in a UK hotel. But that's ridiculous. You don't need to do that either. That's the whole point, isn't it? That is the whole point. So the system is obviously screwed. If that is the metric, if that's the workings out, that it's better to give people £40,000 as a one-off than £158,000 in accommodation every year. Well, what about neither of those things? What about somebody who's not meant to be in the country going, really sorry, I'm sure you had great intentions, good luck with your ambitions, you might want to try France, they're a bit more accommodating over there. Go south, though, because don't get near the coast, because you might return. Lines open, 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom, OK? Before the news, we played you this voice.
There's hardly any experience.
Who is that? These are some of the guesses. Bjorn from ABBA. No. Oddly. Shock. It's not Bjorn from ABBA. Do you know, who's the other one from ABBA? Is it Benny? Is it Bjorn and Benny? Sam's a big ABBA fan. It's Bjorn and Benny, isn't it? When Mamma Mia, the musical, opened in London, it is Bjorn and Benny. I went to a press night for Mamma Mia, so this is obviously a while back, and I'm walking down Dean Street, and the two blokes from ABBA are walking up Dean Street. And what was interesting about that, because I thought it's just funny how fame works. I mean, these guys are multi-gazillionaires, so they don't give a hoot. But if you went back like 25 years from that point, those blokes could not have walked up that street because they were the most famous band on the planet. They just couldn't have got out of it, couldn't have done anything. They couldn't have moved. And there they were, having a mooch up Dean Street, going to their own press night. But anyway, no, it's not Bjorn from ABBA, strange. Zach Polanski, no. Rishi Sunak, it is not. We did say it, the last word of this does sound a bit Rishi-like. Have a listen.
There's hardly any experience.
Experience, that bit.
Experience.
Yeah, thank you. That was good. It's not Rishi. Can we just hear that in isolation again?
Experience.
See, I would guess Rishi, just hearing that one word. Maybe that's what the voice of doom should now become, just one word. Peter Lilly, no. Rory Stewart, it is not. Alistair Strathan, no. Tom Tugendhat, no. James Murray, it is not. David Pinto Jukinski. Any idea? Jukinski? No, it's not him. Ed Miliband, no, it's not him either. It means it comes back tomorrow at around about the same time. Stand by for that. The Voice of Doom returns for day 4. More from you in a couple of moments. Keep it here. 3:20. This is Talk.
no doubt that the British government has acted in an incredibly weak, equivocal way. It's easy to start a war, very difficult to ensure that the aftermath doesn't descend into complete chaos.
What's your view of that outburst of Trump?
Well, Trump doesn't mince his words, but I think his criticism is justified. I mean, we should have realised where our national interest stood, and he should have expressed immediate support.
We have pursued a ludicrous energy policy, preceding this government, frankly, and all the knock-on effects to that for our economy are catastrophic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Rob in Burnley, who says, "Afternoon, Ian. No more foreign escapes for Sakir now. He can't put himself front and centre amongst the coalition of the willing now, surely." Yes, he's kind of... So what I don't understand is the French have called it an illegal war. The Spanish are having nothing to do with it. So he's not entirely alone in his original idea, but the French did step up and ensured there was a sort of level of assistance there. And in fact, I think they're protecting some of our gaffes over there, which is just extraordinary. Karen is in Chester. What have you got for us, Karen? Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm sitting here and I'm quietly seething.
I bet you are.
My son has just moved back home with his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
They've been both work, desperately trying to get together a deposit, but with rising prices, rising taxes, they're just not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
So they've come to live with myself and my husband. We're still working as well.
Yeah.
And £40,000, that's a deposit on a house.
Of course it is. And yet someone who shouldn't be in the country, their family are going to get given that, and so that they will return to their own country. I mean...
Exactly.
Really, I mean, the optics of this, whatever the maths says, you know, that actually it's cheaper to do that than this. I mean, really? That doesn't make it okay.
What they tend to forget, these politicians, if I were to put the key in my front door right now, I walked into my living room and there was a complete stranger sitting on my sofa, I'd quite rightly be within my rights to kick him out.
Yep.
And what they tend to forget is, this is our home.
Yes, it is. It's our home.
This isn't just a country. This is our home.
Yeah, I mean, you put it very simply. It is our home, and we are part of it. We pay into it, and somebody is royally taking the piddle.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
How's it going, having your lad and his girlfriend living there?
It's
different.
Yeah. We had got used to having everyone fly the nest, and
now you've got a reversal
the two of us
going on. I mean, it won't be forever, will it? But it's what you do, isn't it, as a mum and dad?
Of course it is. Yeah, you're a mum and dad till the day you leave this planet.
Yeah. Absolutely bang on. Great call, Karen. Thank you very much indeed for that. Good luck with everything. This comes in from Paul in Belfast, who says, "I'm going to a black tie do tomorrow. Ordinarily, I'd wear my miniature medals proudly on my chest, but you know what? I can't bring myself to put them on. I feel so ashamed that risking my life every day for 33 years leaves me bereft of how my country is now. It's led by such abject cowards." Brilliantly put, Paul. And what a crying shame that someone like Paul, and I'm sure there are others, who was, if I'm reading that correctly, served for 33 years, did put his life on the line. Whether you're in active action every day, it doesn't matter. You are there, willing, ready to go at any moment's notice. And now feeling ashamed to wear the medals of the country that they served and fought for. That's an extraordinary, it's a damning, damning comment on our government. Paul, thank you for that. This is Joan in Sunderland. Good afternoon to you, Joan.
Hello.
Hi, back to Iran. What's happening?
I was nearly rendered speechless when I saw that pathetic Prime Minister, excuse for a Prime Minister. When I listened to all the things he went through, prisoners, servicemen, he and that cretin Hermer and his mate who got chucked out of the Law Society were the ones who were after our veterans, taking them through the courts for the Iraq War. They're doing exactly the same with Hilary Benn's help for Ireland. So that man makes me sick. And then we go, I couldn't remember whether he said our partners or our allies. Do we have any? I mean, it comes to something when the French comes to our aid, house bells.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we go to the defence spending as usual. But where's the money come from when we're going to give failed asylum seekers up to £40,000 a time? The human rights lawyers, their gravy train rolleth on. As I
just don't know how we got here.
Eh?
How did we get here in this place, Joan? I mean, there are people employed in government. I'm not talking about necessarily politicians, but, you know, years before stuff happens, they're employed to forecast the likely upshot of a policy. And somebody somewhere in 2010 would have been able to say, right, if you keep doing this, then by 2026, this is what your country will look like.
I just don't know. It beggars belief, as I say. I could save them millions. Come out of the ECHR, and you won't have to pay anybody anything. And as for that ship, the HMS Dragon, I hope when it does set sail, that it might look out for the good ship Lollipop. It's absolutely, it makes me ashamed. But what I also want, I hope it goes viral, is that video of those MPs dancing. And as for the new one, for the Green Party, she loves photographing herself. The dancing queen, they should call her.
Well, they had her. She was, I mean, as the Telegraph put it this morning, as the world burns, MPs keep dancing. And there is Lindsay Hoyle, who looks as if he's just turned up for an audition on Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah.
With Angela Rippon. Don't blame Ange for being there. She's a healthy old bird, isn't she, Angela?
Exactly.
She's about 110, and she looks great.
I'm nearly 86, but never mind.
And then you've got, as you rightly say, you've got the new MP from the Green Party who's taking a picture of it all.
Oh, yeah, she's working hard. I mean, when I was growing up, there used to be a saying, your country needs you. And believe me, if you love this country, it's going to need you on the 7th of May. Please turn out and vote. Don't ignore it. Don't say, well, you know, it doesn't matter. Because if you don't bother to vote, you end up with somebody else's choice, so you can't blame anybody else. Our country is past life support. It's nearly ready for the last rites. Please vote. Please help us. We can't take this anymore.
Yeah, I get it. Listen, very powerful stuff. Joan, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. There it is, the front page of the Telegraph. Lindsay Hall having a dance-off. Look, I know this was a health initiative, I think, wasn't it? That's what they were promoting. We didn't really want to talk about the health. And I know they have to do stuff and they have to sometimes, you know, liven things up. But I do wonder, when a country is on a war footing, whether having a sort of Strictly Come Dancing moment is particularly helpful or appropriate at that time. Lines are open, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 25 to 4. And look who's just walked into our studio. It's only Sean Keach, who is the science and technology correspondent, head of, in fact, a bit more than a correspondent, at The Sun. Sean, good to see you.
Call me whatever you like. I'm happy to be employed.
I know, exactly. You are the head honcho over there in that department. There's a lot to talk about. I think we should start with a bit of AI, because people know about ChatGPT, they know about Gemini and a couple of others, Grok and the like. But there are others out there, and one's called Anthropic. Yes. But Anthropic has found itself in troubled waters.
Absolutely. This is sort of it was a lot of war news. This is sort of war adjacent. So there's a big company in the US called Anthropic, and they make a chatbot called Claude. So it's a bit like ChatGPT or Gemini. Anyway, they had a big $200 million contract with the US Department of Defense, and it would do stuff like battlefield simulations, but then also boring stuff like, you know, summarizing documents for them. Anyway, the Department of Defense, they asked Anthropic to put in these two removals of guardrails, one that would allow it to do mass surveillance, and then one that would also allow it to choose targets without human intervention, so targets to kill during war. Right. Anthropic not very happy about this. They kicked up a big fuss, said they wouldn't remove these guardrails, and the Department of Defense not very happy about this at all. So they basically blacklisted Anthropic from the Department of Defense, called them a supply chain risk, which is really unprecedented in
just
US
because
history.
It wouldn't play ball with...
Because it wouldn't play ball. Trump was very unhappy. And usually this is the sort of thing that they would do with a company from China where they're worried about spying. But it's not a spying issue. It's literally just because they wouldn't play ball. So then OpenAI, which runs ChatGPT, swept in and said, We'll do it.
We'll do it. Well, I was going to ask. I mean, there was you might have thought that the boys and girls at Grok would have given it a go. Bear in mind the Elon Musk connection.
Because these are very lucrative contracts. And so, but the problem for OpenAI is that a lot of OpenAI employees not very happy with this, and a lot of members of the public aren't happy with this. Yeah. So lots of people have been uninstalling ChatGPT, installing Claude. And actually, I was just looking on my App Store now. Claude is currently in the #2 spot on the App Store rankings. In America, it's #1, so it's soared up, which is funny because no one had really, regular consumers certainly weren't using Claude in any meaningful number until about 3 days ago, and suddenly everyone's obsessed with Claude. So OpenAI is panicking.
And this is all down to the fact that Anthropic did not want to be used, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And now
in a military sense.
OpenAI is sort of backpedaling a bit, and they're saying, well, actually, we don't want to be used for mass surveillance of American citizens either. And so it's this difficulty of, you want to make money, sign these big contracts with the military, but if you don't play ball, then you end up in troubled water.
It's interesting. We were just talking during the break about AI and what it does, particularly during troubled times like a war, because the Epstein files is actually perhaps a more obvious example. There are so many fake stories around it, and they're not just stories that someone has written, I heard this happened. There's full videos and all sorts of things.
Well, actually, AI has made it much easier to pass the Epstein files as well. And also, I saw very weird. Someone had mocked up like a Gmail simulator of Jeffrey Epstein's own inbox, and so you could go on and almost log onto it as if it was your own Gmail. Wow! And it's like search through his email. It's very strange, but there's a lot of creativity going on.
But the trouble with it, of course, is there's also a lot of BS gets posted and out there, and not all of it is AI generated. Some of these are just memes or photoshops, photo grabs of I can't think of the word what word was I looking for?
Deepfakes, maybe? I don't know.
No, just
Photoshop photo.
Yeah, well, anyway, you know what I mean. just images of something.
Doctored.
I keep mentioning. There was I don't know if you remember Andrew Bridgen, the MP. He's no longer an MP, but Andrew Bridgen's got a PhD in posting this guff. Which is extraordinary for somebody who is a former parliamentarian, someone who would describe themselves, I would imagine, still as an independent-minded politician. He's got 355,000 followers. And he just posts this nonsense. There was one earlier today yesterday about Barack Obama. Virginia Giuffre, Epstein victim, speaks from the grave about Barack Obama. Spoiler alert, she didn't. She never spoke when she was alive about it. He's just posted an image with a load of accusations on it. When I point this out, and this is the difficulty with, I suppose, territorial politics as much as it is AI and the like, I get a barrage of people going, leave him alone, he's a great guy, he speaks the truth. But no, he demonstrably doesn't.
But how many of those people are real? There's this theory called the dead internet theory, which is now that on social media websites, the vast majority of people communicating are now bots, just complaining at each other. And so those people trolling you might not even be real people, Ian. I don't want to disparage following, but
there is often a bit of that. There is often a bit of that.
Problem is, you certainly have this where people are willingly posting AI, and then you have the difficulty of people that are also unknowingly posting AI. And I mean, you only have to go on your Facebook feed and you'll see loads of AI rubbish. Then you'll have loads of comments from people like, oh, isn't that amazing? Isn't that so funny? And it's clearly a fake video.
That's the bit. Even as I just looked now, there is another one which is a load of fake pictures of Donald Trump with young girls. They don't exist. It's just been invented. Someone's made a montage of moving videos, so not just a still iffy cutout on Photoshop. And you're right, you look at it, you don't even need to Google it to know that it's fake. And yet, you go to the comments and these people are sick. How are they not arresting him? Because it's not true. And of course, that's Epstein. When we come to the war in Iran, we're seeing more of that as well.
And the algorithm, the more you engage with that, the algorithm will keep feeding that to people, and then it traps them in their own bubble. And it's certainly nefarious when, sometimes there's some stuff, this is clearly fake, but then often you'll get AI content that's only very marginally tweaked, and it's much harder to spot. And there are entire newsrooms dedicated to trying to spot this stuff and root it out, and it can be extremely difficult sometimes to tell what's AI and what's not. It's difficult for the AI to tell what's AI and what's not. Companies keep coming up with new ways of digitally marking content to prove it's out, but it's very difficult, and there's no easy solution.
If you do, the only helpful thing is that if you do look down the comments on an iffy piece of footage about Iran or Epstein, whatever, it's 3 or 4 comments down, somebody will say, hey Grok, is this true? And it usually says, no, it's not. And, it's just completely fake. There's no reference of this in the files. Someone's just made it up, and it looks very much like AI to AI.
But the problem is, even when you have stuff fact-checked, some people will still not even believe the fact. I mean, you only have to think about the people that still believe that the Earth is flat or the moon landings didn't happen. Even when there's overwhelming evidence that something has happened or is true or untrue, you will still have people disputing it.
Do you say the moon landings happen? Are you saying they happened?
I wouldn't like to comment. I don't want to get trolled by the...
Sean Keach thinks the moon landings happened.
Well, go back to the moon.
How weird is that?
In a couple of years, so that might settle it once and for all.
I mean, I don't even believe in the moon. I think that's just kind of a big Batman thing beamed up there with a few craters in it.
I don't know what to say, Ian. I'm going to fact check you.
I think you
fact check you live on air.
Let's come back to basics. Apple have been on the launch again. They do a couple of these a year. This is new iPhone, new MacBook. It's not their biggest launch, but nonetheless, it is significant in terms of what they've announced.
No, it's a bit cheerier, and actually, it's quite good news. Normally, everything is very expensive these days, especially when it comes to tech. Two cheap products, and actually, the Mac is probably more exciting. But I'll start with the iPhone. There's a new iPhone 17e. It's £599, and actually it's pretty good. It's got most of the features that you need. It's got a really nice screen. It's got 256 gigabytes of storage, a relatively new processor, and that's £200 less than the iPhone 17. So if you're looking for a new iPhone, it also comes in a lovely soft pink colour. Actually, I think £599 for a new iPhone is pretty good. The MacBook, I was honestly flabbergasted by. I cannot believe they've done this, but they've made a MacBook for £599. And MacBooks notably benefit from being part of the education scheme too. So if you're a student, 16 or over, or you're a teacher or school staff at any level, you can get it for £499, which is frankly mind-boggling for a MacBook. A lot of parents could be very happy with this news, because previously, if you wanted a MacBook, the cheapest one was the MacBook Air, and that's about £1,000. So the fact that you could get this for $599 or even $499 is frankly shocking. And it comes in nice colours too. Normally, I mean, I quite like the space grey and silver colours, but they come in. There's
yellow.
There's a citrus. I think the yellow is citrus.
Citrus, is it called?
There's a blush. There is a silver, if you want that. And there's an indigo.
Is it indigo?
Indigo.
Yeah. I like that.
They're quite nice. I quite like the indigo. So very impressive, very cheap. And I don't want to bore the listeners too much, but we talk about lots of different crises. There's currently a RAM crisis in the world. RAM is a type of memory that goes into all your products, your phones, your laptops. All the AI companies are buying up all the RAM, and so behind the scenes, this RAM that would go into your phones, your laptops, suddenly very expensive because it's all going into these AI data centers.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of fear that actually tech is going to go up in price. There's talks that maybe the PlayStation 6 will be delayed or extremely expensive because of this RAM crisis. So people very stressed. So the fact that they've managed to get this down to $599 despite the RAM crisis.
But how have they done that? I mean, is
incredible.
it the size of a phone or something? And what have they done?
So what they've done here, the trick is that they've used a processor from your smartphone. So normally Apple makes its own laptop chips. They're called M chips. So you have like M1, M2, M3. And in the phones, you have A series chips. So they've basically taken the A18 Pro, which was in the iPhone 16 Pro, I think, and use that to power it, because the processor in these are extremely powerful.
So
and it's more than enough.
It's just a large phone then?
It's effectively a large phone. There's no backlight behind the keyboard. That's the other reduction.
That doesn't work as a phone.
But it's still got all the same ports, and that's pretty impressive, to be honest. I mean, for the price, it's staggering. And to be honest, if I was Microsoft making sort of cheaper Windows laptops, or Google with its Chromebooks, I'd be quite worried, because previously the sort of main threat was in the higher end expensive. But this is it's a good bargain.
I think they're going to do well.
A lot of schools are going to buy these.
You know what I find interesting is that was probably planned about 8 years ago. And it was ready to go.
And then they waited for the RAM crisis.
Then they wait for the RAM crisis. Talk us through what's going on with the tech giant in China, who's unveiling an electric hypercar that can travel 217 miles an hour. Have I read that correctly?
This is quite a weird one, because it is a real car, but it's also an imaginary car, and so you're going to have to bear with me here a little bit. There's this Chinese company called Xiaomi that makes phones, but they also make cars in China, and actually it's probably going to come out in the UK and Europe in the next 2 years. They make this great electric car called the SU7. Costs about 20 grand, and when it comes here, I think it will probably sell very well. Anyway, they've mocked up this hypercar. It's 270 miles an hour. It's fully electric. And, I saw it. I went next to it. It looked brilliant. But it is not being made for production yet. They've actually made it to go in the Gran Turismo video games. And so they've actually built this car just so it can go virtually in the game.
Wow.
Now, the possible hope for people is the fact that a lot of these cars that have been made for the game in the past have then gone on to inspire real cars. So maybe one day we will get this very cool Chinese hypercar. But it has this weird AI feature where it detects... they say it detects the driver's mood, and so like if you're feeling quite stressed and tired, it'll sort of soften the driving, a bit more comfortable. And if you're sort of like alert and awake, then it'll let you drive a bit more spiritedly. So, and maybe the lighting will change. That's the future of
very good
hypercars.
Which is kind of interesting, because there's simultaneously they're developing cars where you don't even need to drive them. So
Yeah, which I quite like driving. I don't know if I'm up for that. Even cruise control, sometimes I'm like, I don't need this.
I know the Luddites had these arguments, but I genuinely cannot see why collectively, I did read the figure a couple of years ago, how much money is being ploughed into driverless cars. I mean, the figure is, it's multi-billions and billions of pounds. And I just don't know why.
And it's very easy in America as well, because they've got those big straight roads, but here it's a lot more complicated.
Yeah, but to get your money, whether it's Uber or Google, whoever are putting the money in, to get a return, if you put a single driverless car now, if you put it on the streets of, Manchester or London or something, that model that they'd be testing is probably about, £1 million worth of car. Why? I mean, why do they? It will take a century to get your money back.
Eventually, the costs on producing driverless cars will come down, because ultimately, a lot of the money that goes into it is research and development, and at some point they will, have researched and developed enough for it to just work. So I suppose probably the main argument at the moment is safety, because ultimately driverless cars should technically kill you less, which is nice, but I still think it's a hard sell for the public, because I feel like you would feel less aggrieved if you sort of killed yourself in a car versus if the car killed you.
Yes.
I feel like, you have some agency. If I'm driving recklessly and I crash, that's my fault. If the car crashes me, that's a different story. And so I think the public will struggle with that.
I'm sure there's those issues, but as a business model, I'm not getting it, because if you went into Dragon's Den and said, a driverless car, after the dragons had picked themselves up off the floor, laughing, a driverless car, OK, that's fine. What are you expecting to get on year one? Well, year one, we're going to lose around about 950 billion. Year two, we'll lose about 949 billion, and then you go through it, and then you get to the profit about 38 years later. Peter Jones would kick you out the room, wouldn't he?
But it's not even just cars.
You wouldn't get a listen.
They're testing driverless delivery robots. Uber Eats is already testing that in a couple of cities. They're also trying to do flying taxis. Uber
I saw that, the flying taxis.
So it's all going to be driverless. But I quite like driving, so I hope it doesn't.
I like driving too. Final one, Sky launching a bit of a mega sale on TV channels. Big battleground here for supremacy in multi-channel TV and streaming. What are they doing?
Yes, and actually Sky has a sort of mega bundle at the moment that they've just wrapped Disney Plus into, and then HBO Max is launching later this month, and that's going to be wrapped into the bundle. But Sky also has this service called Now TV, which is like if you don't want a Sky box and you don't want a full contract, they have an offer on at the moment, which is usually £10 a month, but it's currently down to $2.99 a month, which is really good, and that gets you all of Sky's channels, their original movies and stuff, plus HBO Max when it launches later this month. So if you want to get a big saving, I mean, I think it saves you something like 80 quid a year. It's a pretty big discount, £10 down to £3 a month. So go to the website, claim that, get your cheap telly.
Sean, thank you. Good to see you. Sean Keach with us. He is, of course, Head of Science and Technology over there at The Sun. And if you look at thesun.co.uk, check out Sean's areas of expertise and his team. There's a lot on there. We've just covered a tiny amount of it there. Make sure you take a look. Thank you to Sean. He's back next week right here on Talk.
no doubt that the British government has acted in an incredibly weak, equivocal way. It's easy to start a war, very difficult to ensure that the aftermath doesn't descend into complete chaos.
What's your view of that outburst of Trump?
Well, Trump doesn't mince his words, but I think his criticism is justified. I mean, we should have realised where our national interest stood, and he should have expressed immediate support.
We have pursued a ludicrous energy policy, preceding this government, frankly, and all the knock-on effects to that for our economy are catastrophic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Dave is over there in Essex, says, driverless cars are nothing new. My wife's been driving for years. Don't shoot the messenger. Thank you, Dave, for that. Gary, East Malling, what a great chap. Sean Keaches, making Talk fun and interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. The tech news, of course, and science news, which Sean also covers. The days of making the geeky pages of newspapers and magazines are kind of over, because this stuff is front page stuff, particularly when you get into the kind of technological change, AI, and all that goes with it, quantum computing, and the entire list of 3D printing. It's going to change all of our lives in a number of ways, which is why we are on it. Let's go to Steve in Scunthorpe. How you doing, Steve?
Hi, not too bad, thanks.
Good. What are your thoughts?
Well, when we're on a war footing, what country would allow people to come into the country without any identification or know who they are and not contain them?
Yeah,
Surely,
we've been making this point this week. Of all times, even by the woeful standards of this government and the previous one, you might think this week there'd be special measures going on down there at Dover, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, I haven't heard about anyone saying this before. Perhaps everyone has been saying
No, only us. We're the only... As far as I can tell, Steve, I heard no politician mention it. It didn't come up in PMQs, which is where you think it might do. I've not heard any kind of press release from Border Force or anyone that advises in that area. Nothing at all.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's, well... Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
No, and there is nothing else to say. You would think during that time, and somebody made the point yesterday, that during this current era, we have, I'm sure, a heightened terror alert across airports and other areas of the country. So there'll probably be a greater police presence in some ports and airports and the like, but not on the English Channel when boats are just coming across. You just float over, jump off. Within 48 hours, you will have been given accommodation and bed and breakfast. It's just sort of beyond extraordinary. You have to start to wonder if somebody is deliberately taking the pee out of us. Steve, thank you very much indeed for that. Ian, get some decent glasses, mate. Some that fit you. You look like Jack Duckworth from Corrie. It's an odd observation, since I have probably the least controversial glasses. I've worn these for about 6 years. But you know what glasses are like. You either love them or you flipping hate them. Kev wears a fine pair of glasses, Kev.
Cost a fortune.
Did they really?
Absolute fortune.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're like Ray-Bans, and I had to get different lenses and everything.
Special ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that just a man
let's
of
talk
your...
about glasses, shall
Let's
we?
talk about glasses.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
What's
the
your
main...
favourite sunglasses?
Yeah.
As well? What is going on?
Ballaramas are my favourite sunglasses.
Oh, they really?
Yeah, I like those.
You like
Ray-Bans, like the wraparounds.
I quite like a Persil.
Yeah, I like Persil. Very good Italian
very good,
classic.
Not the washing powder.
No, the Persil's great. Italian classic. Couldn't agree with you more.
Nice.
I do have a couple of pairs of Persils.
Good.
Well, because when I was in LA,
I'll bring mine in tomorrow.
We are talking about glasses, aren't we? When I was in Los Angeles, in LA, everybody has about 10 pairs of sunglasses.
Yes, of course.
At different times of day and stuff.
Yeah,
so I used to have a hell of a range.
The collection.
But I've still got the habit. I've still got about 5 pairs of sunglasses.
That's great.
Anyway,
other than that,
enough spectacle talk.
Enough.
The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, that number 10 Downing Street.
It's great, wasn't it?
It was extraordinary. I mean, gaslighting doesn't come into it. He's just lying. We're taking every step to protect the people of Cyprus. No, you haven't. The Spanish are now protecting us. Just now, the Greeks were protecting us, and before that, the French were. We've got HMS Dragon, dragging its feet in Port.